I'll call to order this City Council meeting, Bloomington City Council meeting for Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. This is our third evening of our 2024 budget presentation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Flaherty? Here. I've got everybody mixed up again. I'm so sorry. Sims?
Here.
Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Rallo?
Here.
Scambalori?
Here.
Sandberg?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
And Volan?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we proceed, we will now go to our land and labor acknowledgement. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you. We recognize that the City of Bloomington sits on native land. The city, as well as city administrative buildings, are on the traditional homelands of the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people, and we acknowledge they are past, present, and future caretakers of this land. We also acknowledge that much of the economic progress and development in Indiana and in Bloomington resulted from the unpaid labor and forced servitude of people of color, especially enslaved African labor. We acknowledge that this land remains home to and site of gathering and healing for many indigenous and other people of color, and we commit to the work necessary to create and promote a more equitable and just Bloomington. We move forward knowing and acknowledging our rich, complicated, and sometimes painful past so that we can learn from it and experience a true land of opportunity.
Thank you very much. This evening, our third night of budget presentations will include the Bloomington Housing Authority, Housing and Neighborhood Development Department, Economic and Sustainable Development Department, Community and Family Resources, and the Parks and Recreation Department. Before we proceed with presentations, as a reminder, we adopted two motions on Monday evening. One concerns time limits, and the other concerns the purpose and effect of recommendations on the budget. The time limit motion that we adopted concerns council member questions that will consist of no more than 3 minutes per council member per departmental presentation. And then we will go to public comment, which is limited to 2 minutes per speaker, and we'll entertain comments from the gallery as well as on Zoom. In terms of the purpose and effect of the recommendations, there'll be offered a motion to recommend inclusion of the particular departmental budget as presented within the relevant salary ordinance and appropriation ordinance for our consideration. The votes taken this week on each department budget are non-binding recommendations that reflect the council's position on the presented budgets at this time. The council's adoption of the 2024 budget will not include department-by-department votes. The council is scheduled to consider and vote on 3 appropriation ordinances and 3 salary ordinances later this fall. The 3 appropriation ordinances include the Civil City budget, the Utilities Department budget, and the budget for Bloomington Transit. The 3 salary ordinances will include salaries for officers of the police and fire departments, salaries for appointed officers, non-union, and AFSCME employees for all the departments of the city, and salaries for elected officials. Council discussion and a public hearing on these items of legislation is scheduled for September 27th, beginning at 6:30, which will be a committee of the whole meeting, and then the budget adoption meeting is scheduled for October 11th, beginning at 6:30. So we will now go to the Bloomington Housing Authority for their presentation. Kate Kazunis, I hope I'm pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
And as a reminder, we don't approve this budget as a council. It's approved by their board, but they're kind enough to present it because it concerns, of course, city matters. So thank you for coming, and please proceed. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you for including us. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to present to you our budget and sort of give you a recap on what it is that we do and what we plan to do. The green?
Could you pull your microphone a bit closer?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Is that better? All right. So we start with our mission statement to strengthen opportunity beginning but not ending with housing, because we're doing more than housing. So we administer public funds in a manner that allows us to provide affordable housing opportunities and a very, very robust service program, encouraging self-sufficiency for our residents and our voucher holders, and partnering with all of our partners in the community and with service providers, and to a great extent with our residents and our voucher holders. We have Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, and under Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers, we have a variety of different kinds of programs. Project-based vouchers are where we are supporting housing in other people's buildings, but we're also in our own, now that we've converted our public housing to low-income housing tax credit partnerships. We have single-room occupancy vouchers. We have Veterans Affairs vouchers. We have emergency housing vouchers. And we run a family self-sufficiency program, which basically helps people where they are and then makes them more economic self-sufficient over time. We can convert a voucher into a home ownership and help pay mortgage expenses for someone who is able to enter into the home ownership program. We partner with the city, and we have the down payment assistance classes and the home ownership programs that are offered through HAND. And then resident opportunity and self-sufficiency is for our residents in our own units, but it is very a mirror, if you will, of the family self-sufficiency for our voucher holders. Our HCV HAP increased to $13 million. That is how much money we increased as payments to landlords in your community. We do have some vouchers in Monroe County. The majority of our vouchers are in the city of Bloomington, and that is transfer of wealth from Washington, D.C. to our local landlords. We are increasing our payment standards. We had a window of opportunity that the Board of Commissioners, some of who are with me tonight, took advantage of to increase how much we are paying to the landlords, and we are now paying 120% of what is called fair market rents established by HUD. And so now, just to give you an example, we're able to pay $1,148 for a one-bedroom and $1,348 for a two-bedroom, which makes us competitive with the fair market rents that other landlords are charging. And so we actually now have an opportunity to move very low-income people into considered neighborhoods of opportunity and have mixed incomes throughout the city. That was a very big accomplishment, in my opinion. We also used a particular tool to analyze how many people were on our voucher program. Once they're on the program, we no longer have a lot of control over their rents going up and what they can pay, and if they choose to stay in a particular apartment, they stay there, and their rents then exceed that 30% limit, what is considered affordable to anyone at any income rate. And so by increasing our payment standards, we were able to reduce the number of people who were paying more than 30% down to 11.6, and our forecast for next year is to get that down to just 5% of our participants paying more than 30% of their income. We were awarded 30 more vouchers. The owners at the Woodbridge Apartments decided to take it to market, but the people who were in there as a multifamily HUD subsidized property are entitled to protections to stay there. And so we are now absorbing that subsidy through this voucher program, and they can stay in place. And at any time they decide to move, they can move with continued assistance anywhere in the United States and its 8 territories. We executed a $16 million credit swap for RAD 1. We have a very, very low interest rate. We negotiated our financing for, this is Reverend Butler and Walnut Woods, and the federal government, in their wisdom, decided to abandon the LIBOR basis and go to something called SOFR and tie the bank rate no longer to Treasury Department, but to a more market-based rate for lending. And I have never done a credit swap. I have never dealt with hedge fund managers. That was a part of the mortgage industry we weren't familiar with. But we did this $16 million credit swap. Our rate was fixed at 5%, and it's kind of a guarantee on this loan. The rates have now gone higher in the mortgage industry, and so we are now getting refunded an amount, and we're taking that money and we're putting it in a reserve account, so when the tax credit period has expired, we will have a substantial down payment for absorbing the debt at the end of the first 15 years. And then, just because it's kind of fun, we have a bat problem at Crestmont. And as you probably know, they are endangered. And so we have installed bat homes, and hopefully that will keep them out of our apartments and still respect the fact that they're great mosquito eaters. Our landlord risk mitigation program is providing deposits and basically an insurance policy for landlords who may have hesitancy about accepting vouchers, and this is particularly as an incentive for people that may be hard to house. And under hard to house would be people that may not have any credit. And therefore, the landlord says, I can't run a credit history on you, you don't meet my qualifications. So in lieu of a very good credit report, we are offering an insurance policy for them to pay so that they will not lose money on a voucher holder. We initiated a shuttle service. We have a ways to go to offer incentives, but we are offering to our residents in all 3 of our properties a shuttle to go directly to the grocery stores or to Walmart, places that we need to expand this program so that, I'm sorry, but catching the public bus when you are carrying groceries is not always the most convenient thing to do, and so what we're offering is an ability to make their lives a little easier by taking them directly to the stores and back. We had 74 families on our family self-sufficiency program, and we have paid out over $136,000 last year in escrow funds to participants in the family self-sufficiency program. We also we received some ARPA money, and that was for capacity building at Summit Hill, and we have already created a land trust with that, and we are in the final stages of having the land over at Arlington Park transferred to us, and we hope to make an announcement for sort of a grand opening on that property. We're going to have 45 for-sale, single-family, affordable housing. There will be probably 4 to 5 market-rate housing units, anywhere from 4 to possibly 9 Habitat for Humanity units at that location, and the rest will be land trust properties that we will sell. And I know there was an article recently in the newspaper. If you have any additional questions about that, we'd be glad to follow up with you. We have already installed solar panels at the Walnut Woods apartments. We have solar panels already. Last year we put solar panels on our admin building. We have the Reverend Wood RAD audit for the low-income housing tax credit, so that was our RAD conversion. So those audits were finished and were very good audits on how we were managing those and the financing. I'm out of time.
Well, without objection, could you finish in the next minute or so?
Well, let's just jump ahead because you all have access to this, and I just want to show you that out of our properties, and this is all 3 of our properties, we will have approximately $5 million in rental income. We will have expenditures of $2,800. We will have debt service. This number is based on these figures. We will have additional debt service before the end of the year. But the bottom line on this is that we have a 1.2 debt coverage ratio, which we are easily meeting. We have a budget program that is also taking money to the bottom line of only about $30,000, but we also have HUD-held reserves, which is another cushion, so that if landlords need the money, that we have that money. Our main admin, which we call the COCC, will have net operating or total operating income of $686,000, but $656,000 of expenses. So the margin is pretty thin with a $30,000 in the black to our bottom line. So all of our programs appear to be cash flowing well for next year.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Let's go to council questions. I'll start with Councilmember Volin.
Just a brief question, and thanks for the presentation. What does RAD stand for?
Rental assistance demonstration, and it was the HUD way of moving housing out of public housing into the private sector, but providing some transitionary subsidy. So now that public housing no longer gives us operating funds or capital funds for those properties, we are subsidizing the tenants with vouchers.
So RAD 1 and RAD 2 were simply our local names for the first projects funded under that protocol.
Correct.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you, Ms. Kazunas. I see from one of the slides that just kind of zipped by that you didn't get a chance to address was a mention of the core building
Yes.
and Brinshore Development Corporation, which you're partnering with. Could you talk just a little bit about that and when we might see that come online?
We submitted the application for low-income housing tax credits. The difference between this one and what we've done in the past with our own public housing is this is a 9% tax credit application. We're hoping to have 38 units of permanent supportive housing. We're partnering with Centerstone, where they will be a handful, 8 or 9, what is called 811. We, in HUD world, we have a bad habit of naming everything after the funding source. So those will be very intense permanent supportive housing, but we will have other support for the balance of the residents there, and that will be predominantly hard-to-house people as well. With the award, which we anticipate in November, we then will put together a financing package and actually plan to pull our grading permit and start demolition and construction in June or July of next year.
So that will be similar to Kinzer Flats? Is that comparable?
No, probably not.
Okay,
I really can't speak to that.
all right. Thank you.
Councilmember Skimbaluri.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. One of the slides mentioned a housing success rate of 64%.
Yes.
Could you speak in more detail about the housing success rate? What exactly does that measure?
So when we issue a voucher, typically the person who receives the voucher, who has been on the waiting list for probably 2 years, has 90 days to get housing. And then we have certain circumstances under which they can ask for an extension. So let's say in 120 days, 64% of the people who we give vouchers to are able to secure housing. That's a number that we consider a target. It's up from 60%, but we just adopted the 120% of AMI starting the 1st of August. And what we are hoping with the higher payment standards is that people will be far more successful in securing housing with more money to shop with.
I see. And can you give us a sense of, is that a number we benchmark against our peer agencies elsewhere, or?
It's a number we discuss with HUD on a monthly basis, and I have not benchmarked that, but I will do that.
Okay. And where am I in time? The Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund, what successes are you seeing? We've discussed that several times over the last few years.
Well, we're now actually having, in fact, there was a landlord breakfast this morning, and we hosted a bunch of landlords. I did not attend, but I had board members there and the staff that is actually running that program there. I find sometimes when an executive director attends things, they tend to then defer to the executive director when the stars really need to shine on their own with the people that are doing this program. So I did not attend so that they could shine very brightly at this event. And at this particular point in time, I think we have 34.
Okay, great. Thank you
But
so
it's a
much.
program we're marketing heavily to get more people involved.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Kazunas.
Councilmember Sims and then Piedmont Smith.
Thank you. Ms. Kasunas, thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Since my time on this council, this is my second term, BHA has grown and evolved and developed, and we're doing some great things. So I just want to thank you and your staff and all these programs and everyone you work with to keep us on that upward trend. But my specific question has to do with the Arlington lots.
Yes, sir.
And if I'm correct, you said there were going to be 4 or 5 market rate?
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, they'll all be single-family homes, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, okay. So 4 or 5 market rate and up to 9 Habitat for Humanity homes?
Yes, sir.
And by my calculation, I'm not a math whiz, but that leaves about 29 lots for the land trust. So do you have developers or home builders lined up or working with them to?
Except for the Habitat homes, all of the homes will be the Clear Creek manufactured homes.
Okay.
And we will act as the developer on those approximately 30 lots and then sell them to qualified people working, when I say qualified, working very closely with the hand department for the qualifications for middle income, low and middle income, above 80% AMI, but below 120%.
Okay, manufactured homes. All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Kazunas. First, I wanted to briefly follow up on Councilmember Sims' question. So will there be duplexes or triplexes included here, or will they all be standalone single-family homes?
There has been some discussion. We don't have a final plat to submit yet, but there has been some discussion about duplex. As you know, it's laid out in a grid with alleys. And so there has been some discussion on whether or not we would combine and have a duplex situation on some of the corner lots where the front of the house of one house would face one street and the front of that other house would face the other street, but that has not actually been decided. It would be very limited, but it might fit on that grid system.
I see, thank you. And then my other question is, in your memo where you reviewed your 2023 accomplishments, you said that you continue to award over a quarter of the construction and contract work to Section 3 or WMBE contractors. So this is really interesting to me. I was recently at a conference where the city of South Bend discussed their WMBE program, Women and Minority-Owned Businesses. Is this Section 3, is that something required by the federal government, or?
It's something encouraged by the federal government. Section 3 are low-income people, primarily people who are on our voucher system or who live in our units, and we are hiring a lot of them to help with the construction period.
Oh, okay, that's great.
So those may be construction jobs that are temporary, but at least we are creating jobs amongst our own clientele.
So it's more focused on the actual workers rather than a company run by minority or women?
So no, it's a combination.
Okay.
So sometimes a Section 3 worker may also be a minority, but not necessarily. So we count the women and minority-owned businesses separately than we count our own clientele, Section 3.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And that's an opportunity for them to learn a construction skill. One of our minority businesses is a flat work, concrete, and there's a huge demand for flat work and skilled flat work. And so that's an opportunity for some of our residents and voucher holders to learn a skill in a trade that they could be then employed in. The ideal would be we would match them with our family self-sufficiency so that they would eventually no longer need subsidy at all.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Further council questions? Councilmember Smith.
And thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Will you just tell me how many people do you touch and do you help each year?
I only help the 30 people that work for me, but the 30 people who work for me help about, I would say, 14,000 families.
Wow, what a great thing. Thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Mr. Lucas, I assume, is it customary to go to public comment or include council comment or for this, for the Bloomington Housing Authority?
I recall going to the public in the past. If the council would like to do that, that certainly wouldn't be inappropriate.
It would be appropriate. So let's go to the public. If there's any public that would like to comment on the Bloomington Housing Authority presentation. Yes, please come to the microphone, and you have 2 minutes. Okay. All right. Mr. Lucas, do we have anyone on Zoom?
Yes, if there are folks attending on Zoom that would like to speak to this presentation, please raise your hand by clicking the Reactions tab or the More tab, or sending the meeting host a chat to let us know you'd like to speak.
All right, let's wait a moment. No one? Okay, we'll come back to council then, and for any comment to wrap this topic up. Council comment, yes. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Just one more thing jogged my memory when we were talking about WMBE and Section 3. I had to play, no, it's not a question, it's a comment, but I just had an opportunity to visit the site and talk with some of the workers, look at the work, the actual walks that's been doing and some of the ADA adaptations, and talk with some of the folks there and talked about their future and what do you think and how do you see this, your life moving forward, getting this skill. And I just think that was wonderful. So, I mean, we talked about it a while back, but to see it in fruition, to see people working, to see hard hats, and it was hot that day too, so I really felt for them. But I think that was a very good thing. I did talk with the contractors, or actually it seems like the head guy, and he mentioned they will be doing the work at the Hopewell project, at the core building. Is that correct? So, and that intrigued me even more to talk with him. So I just wanted to mention that. There's a lot of progress going on up there. There's a lot of work to go, but I think this is a very, very good program for our community, and I'm just very thankful for everyone that's a part of this. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation and for your good work and very positive outcomes. All right, let's move on now to Housing and Neighborhood Development. Director Zodi, you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Rollo. As we're teeing up the slides here, let me just thank the council members for your years of service, especially those of you that are going off the council. I've known most of you for a long time since my hair was a different color. And so it's been my pleasure to work with you over all these years in different capacities. I want to thank you all for what you've done for the city of Bloomington. So starting off here with the hand department, we're glad to present our budget to you for the 2024 calendar year. Just to restate our mission, as we always do, that the hand department is here to enhance the quality of life for Bloomington residents by developing programs, services, and partnerships with public and private organizations to preserve community character, promote safe and affordable housing, and protect neighborhood vitality. We also staff 4 commissions: the Redevelopment Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, and the CDBG Citizens Advisory Committee that some of you sit on each year. A little more background: we have 19 staff, and I want to thank the hand staff, many of whom are online or in the room tonight. And I want to thank other departments. None of us in hand could do what we do without the other departments in the city, and I am, at least once a day, think to myself how grateful I am to work with just a tremendous group of people here at the city who are good-humored and hardworking, and I've been extremely lucky in my career to have that, and I will always be grateful for that. Our initiatives in the department, many of you know what we do, but we have the rental inspection program, neighborhood compliance and program services, historic preservation, our community development block grant, our HUD dollars through the Home Investment Partnership Program, housing counseling and home ownership assistance, affordable housing, and our housing development fund, which I'll talk a lot about this evening. And then our programming that's been sort of added on the last few years with American Rescue Plan, our home ARP dollars, which I'll go into, and then, of course, the ED Lit funds. I want to talk a minute about efficiencies. This was in the council memo, but we always try to keep an eye on this in the department, and what are we doing to be more efficient with the things we do. And we've been working still to digitize our rental files. We are about 58% complete with digitizing 11,000 rental files that are in the office. We are implementing this year new software for our HUD programming that will be a better, more efficient interface for organizations and others that want to apply for dollars like CDBG. It'll be more of a website interface rather than email and sort of the former kind of paperwork heavy that we did previously. And keeping an eye on equity. We need to keep talking about that and making sure that what are we doing to help advance equity? And certainly our rental housing program, our motto is if you rent in Bloomington, you're entitled to safe housing. It doesn't have to be the prettiest or the coolest, but it does need to be safe. And we also are engaging in efforts in partnership with the Housing Authority to look at expanding our fair housing initiatives as requested by HUD, and our housing security efforts. Heading Home of South Central Indiana, Mary Morgan and her team are good partners with us in advancing, making sure that we are doing what we can to open up housing opportunities for people in Bloomington who may be at risk or literally homeless, as we say. And then on sustainability, we've identified 12 goals in the city's climate action plan where HAND has alignment. So everything from food security to helping just general community social service advancement. We also have our neighborhood cleanups, which I'll talk about, and our efforts to help remove invasive species from our city. One of the things I've talked to a number of council members about, primarily Councilmember Piedmont Smith this year, is how we are aligning with the 2020 housing study that was done back during the pandemic. The city commissioned this study, and there were 13 sort of goals out of that study that came away, and so I'm going to just highlight 3 for you tonight just to give you an idea of where we are. So one of the goals was to secure and conserve existing housing. One of our big priorities, something we are always trying to improve, is our home rehab program to protect our existing housing stock, let people age in place, preserve home ownership. We have our program rental operation to preserve rental housing. And then our down payment and our shared equity programs. How do we secure home ownership? How do we keep it? And how do we grow it? Establishing education programs for tenants and landlords. This has taken on a new sort of flair in the last few years with some action by the General Assembly, but we have strong partnerships with the Apartment Association, IU through our B-Town Neighboring Project, which I'll talk a little bit about, how we get students and residents to live together more cohesively. And Kate Gazunas talked about the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund and how we can help educate tenants about what they need to do. I was at the breakfast this morning, and we heard from landlords and property managers and gave them information about how we can have that partnership in the community and how it's important to open up housing opportunities for people with vouchers. And then, of course, we have our Home Buyers Club and our housing counseling efforts that we do on an ongoing basis. And leverage opportunity sites to expand housing. This has been our biggest area of growth in the department, I think, as far as what we're spending our time doing with the Hopewell neighborhood, with the Arlington Park Drive neighborhood that you mentioned, which is where our land trust will be, and then the upcoming Summit District proposal that where we're expected to see several thousand units of housing on the south side if that proposal moves forward, and that's been a big undertaking for a lot of departments, primarily planning, but HAND has been involved in that as well. So by the numbers, the housing study called for 2,592 units of housing. And so the question, I think Councilmember Volan asked me last year, how are we doing on that? On the rental side, there have been around 3,650 mostly rental units approved since 2020. Of course, prior to since 2016 during this administration, more than 5,000 units, 10,000 bedrooms. And we count about 645 of those 3,650 to be affordable and rental. Homeownership side is where we need to grow. We've had, my estimation is about 215 new single-family units approved in the city. This is when you look at building permits from the county, the approvals that have come through, like Arlington Park Drive, Osage Place, the Habitat for Humanity is building. So we need a lot. We have a lot of room to grow on the home ownership side, but that gives you a snapshot of where we are. There is quite a few numbers coming down the pipeline, 6,000 units if you count Hopewell. We are being conservative on our estimate of the Summit District project, and those are the primary numbers where the 6,000 will show you what we have coming down the pike. And ROI, Regional Opportunities Initiative, is updating their regional study that was done in 2019, and we should see numbers from Monroe County coming soon, and we'll certainly incorporate that into everything we're doing. So 2023 has been a year of change for the HAND department. We have a new assistant director, Anna Hansen, is in the room tonight, and I want to thank her for her hard work thus far. We have an affordable housing program manager that you all approved last year. Stephanie LaFontaine is also in the chamber tonight and has been able to really tackle and dive in on some of our housing programs and figure out how we make these work and how we grow them and make them sustainable. Our Hopewell site, a lot of outreach there. We were awarded a READY grant. HAND in the engineering department primarily worked on an application that was awarded $1.8 million for the construction of a portion of Jackson Street that will be directly behind the core building, which some of you asked Ms. Gazunas about previously. Arlington Park project agreement between the city and the Summit Hill Community Development Corporation was an activity this year. More federal funding coming, $2 million from the Home American Rescue Plan allocation. This will be targeted, I spoke to the council about this earlier this year, where we will have $2 million to assist 4 qualifying populations of people who are either homeless or at risk of being unhoused. And so we look forward to rolling that out. We're putting those pieces in place now to see that program roll out over the next 5 years. And then we are continuing to monitor our affordable and workforce housing. And more globally in the department, we are going through program evaluation and auditing in partnership with HUD, I'll say, also amongst our staff. It's kicking all of our programs in the tires and saying, how is this doing? What do we need to do differently? What's not working? And that is a pretty big undertaking that's an ongoing process in the department. As far as our budget goals for 23, we are continuing our cycle inspections of new and expiring permitted units. And we're continuing to train and implement the enterprise software in the department. We are continuing our partnerships with neighborhoods and landlords. I mentioned some partnerships earlier, but really focusing in on Title VI and Title 16, which is, of course, neighborhood compliance and our rental program. Title VI during this time of year is quite heavy. We have a lot of activity across the city for Title VI with move-ins and just the growing season continuing. And our neighborhood cleanups, I'm proud to say that we had a goal of ridding at least 10 tons from 2 neighborhoods this year. We removed nearly 19 tons of waste from the neighborhoods. We had recycling at one of those. It was a suggestion by one of you last year, and so we were able to have a recycling truck at one of our neighborhood cleanups, which was helpful. And then we are continuing to monitor unsafe buildings and problem properties. So things we talked to you all about, what's going on with this house, what's going on with that property. That keeps us very busy in the department as well. Historic preservation, we're continuing that outreach. We've got a lecture series coming up, and I always use this opportunity to say, if you think your property might be historic or you have a question about it, call our office. Don't just assume, because there are things that the Historic Preservation Commission may want to see, and so we always raise that public service message whenever we can. We want to keep making measurable contributions to the Climate Action Team through cleanups and removal of invasives, our partnership with MC Iris, and our pilot program with the Indianapolis Zoo has resulted in some donations going up to help feed the animals and put otherwise invasives in their habitats, which has been great. And then we funded 7 neighborhood projects thus far. And we want to continue engagement with neighborhoods for Hopewell and, of course, the B-Town Neighboring Project. From the HUD side, we want to keep providing housing counseling. We've provided housing counseling to about 60 individuals this year. 45 of those folks have gone through our Home Buyers Club. And we have done 5 foreclosure conferences where we've helped people avoid foreclosure. We've talked about evictions before, and those are still going steady. I want to thank Tonda Radawan and CJAM and HEP for all their work. But our program manager here has done 5 foreclosure evictions thus far this year. We continue, with your help, to provide community development block grant assistance to social service agencies, both for programming and for a construction activity. I want to thank the Redevelopment Commission for their representation on that as well. Providing affordable housing opportunities through home. We have down payment assistance that we offer, and we've done 2 of those this year. We have 4 that may be in the pipeline on down payment assistance, and 1 pending, we hope, through the city's shared appreciation homeownership program. And then we have about 25 rehabs in the pipeline, either owner-occupied, emergency rehab, or home modification for accessible living that help people who may be having different accessibility needs as they age, or they have an injury or anything that might help adapt their home appropriately. So our budget request this year is a little over $3.2 million. It's an overall decrease of nearly 1.5. This is reflected through a reduction in our request for ED-lit dollars and the Housing Development Fund, and I'll explain that. It doesn't mean nothing's going on, but it just is a matter of how we appropriate dollars. Personnel services, we are requesting a full-time position as a program specialist that can help out with a lot of our housing programming. So we're up there. On category 2, up a little bit, we think, due to fuel costs on our supplies. And then other services, this is where our additional housing money would come in, where it's a decrease, but we are still requesting money from the Housing Development Fund to be appropriated, as well as an allocation of ED-lit dollars. And we do that with sort of 3 main buckets and categories that I've talked to you about now for 3 years. Our increasing housing security, how do we do that? We're talking about the home ARP dollars that will help in a specific way for specific populations, but in the past we've allocated money in this bucket to Heading Home of South Central Indiana. How do we help sustain housing, whether it be rental for low to moderate income, or housing first, or permanent supportive housing? How do we do that to increase housing security? How do we help people make or pay less than 30% of their income on rent? And that encompasses a lot of things. Developing rental housing, we are working hard on that with the development of the Hopewell property. The core building has been a major activity, and I again want to thank departments for their work on that and pushing that through to get the tax credit application submitted in July with all their help. And then advancing home ownership. Last year I told you that the challenge is greater to figure out how to get home ownership at the volume that you get rental housing, and so we're looking at more ownership opportunities at Hopewell and at Arlington Park Drive. So that adds up to asking for a request from ED-lit of $909,000 and the Housing Development Fund, which would be the unappropriated piece of the cash balance of the Housing Development Fund to use for expenditures there. Here's our budget summary, as you see in your memo, compared to previous years. So total request is $3,211,990. So in conclusion, before I take questions, just want to thank you again for your time, our efforts to preserve community character, protect neighborhood vitality, and plan for and promote affordable housing now and in the future. We do this again with a lot of sense of urgency, with people calling the office, asking about housing, and we appreciate your consideration of our request tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Director Zodi. We'll go to council questions now. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Zodi, and to all your staff. In your mission, you have preserve community character. Who determines what is the community character? I mean, is this something that it comes from our comp plan, or how do you know exactly what you're trying to preserve?
Well, I think the code, I think that's, first when we look at what our community character is, I think it comes from the comprehensive plan. I think it comes from the UDO. I think it comes from our elected officials, the public, obviously. In our department, we look at what is our basic statutory duty that we do every day. What are those basic services that we provide? And I think at the basic level, when we're looking at something like code enforcement or the rental program, those help sustain the community, provide opportunities for people to concentrate on community character, for instance. I think we look anytime there's a new development coming, there's certainly a lot of talk about that and discussion in the community. The master plan for Hopewell, I think, is helping determine the character of a new neighborhood. When's the last time we created a neighborhood in Bloomington? And when's the next time we'll have the opportunity to create one in the middle of our city? So there, I think, are a lot of different things that make that contribution toward community character. But it is, at the end of the day, up to us.
Up to
our elected officials, the public, people who live in Bloomington, like myself, all of us in the room. So I do. It's not consistent, right? It changes with elections. It changes with programs. It changes with plans. And that's what part of being a community is. It's always changing, and I think people adapt to that. Some adapt better than others.
In that respect, do you think our training and our awareness in the last few years of DEIB efforts kind of factors into community character and how we can maybe improve or be more inclusive in our community character?
100%.
Yeah.
I think you have to continue to ask the questions, right? DEI, if I may, it's not something that is intuitive to everyone. And we come at it from different places, different backgrounds. And so you have to continue to talk about it, though, and ask the questions and have those sort of uncomfortable moments and give each other grace and talk about what we need to do to advance that. And I think the hand department, I think the city has a role to play in the community's future when it comes to DEI. Separately, I will also say that when it comes to sustainability, and I don't want to speak for ESD, but I think we all have a role to play, right? Every little bit is going to make things more sustainable if you keep on it and you keep after it. And I think that's why it's important for the hand department to be a part of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Councilmember Sims.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Zodi. I'll tag on a little bit with Councilmember Piedmont Smith with DEI. And all I simply want to know, and I am aware of the training that the city so graciously provided for department heads and elected folks. But one of the things that I've been talking with all department heads is how do we get that training and that information filtered down through our staff, our field staff, our rental inspection people, because that's really where ultimately the rubber meets the road. Sure. So what have you specifically in your department done to ensure that training is getting down to everyone in your department? You have programs, what are your plans?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, Councilmember Sims, I'll look at, we don't want to focus on just what's required, but I'll tell you we need to do more there and getting it down to the program level and at the staff level. And I think it comes first from those conversations, how we're spending our staff time. And I'll admit that A lot of our staff time has been extremely busy on programmatic functions, and we haven't spent enough time on DEI. But I think it's important, and I think, I'd like to commit to doing that moving forward, and how we'll do that. I will say that with the different functional areas in the department, people come to the DEI discussion from different places, and we have to, I think, have deliberate discussions and make sure we're committing the time that it takes to bring people to maybe the same place initially and say, where are we going to go from here? And we haven't done that yet, and I'm happy to commit to do it.
I'm sorry, what plans do you have specifically to do that?
Well, I think it would be, I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think it would be, we have to set aside time. We were looking at this fall, for instance, doing some training blocks. Now, we haven't talked about DEI, just full transparency, as part of those training blocks, but something we feel like we need to do better in the department is setting aside staff time for trainings. It's pretty rare that everybody's in the office. There are 2 hours a week that everybody's scheduled to be in the office together, and that's Wednesday mornings when we have our staff meetings. So how do we operationalize that into possibly some DEI training, or what it is? I really, having introduced this topic with a group of people at my last job, I believe it does require a lot of introduction, and what's the purpose, what is it, what isn't it, what are we talking about when we talk about DEI, and I think that needs to be a really deliberate discussion. I don't think it can be rushed. So I think I need to work a little harder at putting that in place.
Thank you.
Further questions? I'll take an opportunity. Mr. Sodi, you mentioned, and these things I think it might be related, a paucity of single-family homes being built in the community relative to demand. And I wondered if you had any further comment about that, and maybe a corollary, something related. I'm sure there's an incentive to buy homes in Bloomington and rent them as Airbnbs. Do you track Airbnbs?
We don't track them formally in the office. We track them through, we talk to Visit Bloomington, for instance. The number fluctuates. So we don't enforce any regulation on what are called short-term rentals in Bloomington right now, other than their necessity to comply with historic preservation guidelines or Title VI, which is overgrowth and things like that. I need a little help clarifying the first part of your question, council member, on the construction of single-family homes. I'm not sure I understood that.
Well, it seems to me from housing studies that there's a demand for single-family homes, but relatively few are being constructed. Do you have any insight relative to that? Or is that a better question for planning and transportation?
Well, I think they would have something to say. My take on it would be, in the city of Bloomington, there have been an average of 30 to, I would say, 50 building permits for what can generally be defined as single-family homes over the last 3 years, okay? And so I think that amounts to what it costs to build. I think during the pandemic, construction costs have been up. I think land is a factor. There aren't as many places to build in the city limits, a single-family home. And then, of course, the issue of affordability of if you are able to construct a single-family home, what are you able to sell it for? So what do we do on the back end? The city can't control the market, but we can influence the market by helping people get to a point of opportunity to buy. And so the shared appreciation program that the city created a few years ago, in addition to down payment assistance, programs can help get people into a competitive position who might not otherwise be, especially for first-time home buyers that may not have a lot of cash.
Very good. Well, I have a little time. You're asking for one policy specialist. That's not a rental inspector. I'm wondering about, with so many new rentals, if you have an adequate staff to fill the need.
That's a great question. I think you asked me that last year as well. We believe right now our capacity for the rental program is okay. We have the new software we're implementing. When we talked about this today, in fact, I sort of anticipated this question. And I think into next year, and maybe next year, we may come back to you and say, it's time for another rental inspector. Now, I've told you before, if annexation were to go through, absolutely we would need more rental inspection staff. But when we look at what those efficiencies are with the schedule, as well as software, what does that do to our sort of staff time? And so we're not quite there yet for me to say, yeah, we need another one, but I think we need to keep having that discussion.
Okay, good to know. Any other questions? Councilmember Volin.
Following up on Councilmember Rallo's questions, first of all, would it be Hans' opinion that city code should change to allow single-family housing built on smaller parcels of land? Would that help? In other words, is the requirement we have for how much land a house needs to sit on too great?
I would want my planning colleagues to offer an opinion on that, Councilmember Volin, but not to sidestep your question at all. My point in doing that is the technical side of that is something I don't possess on lot size and all that, so I don't want to go too far there. But I will say, land is a factor, and when we look at R4 zoning, Councilmember Piedmont asked about the Arlington Park project, and could we do duplexes? It's R4, so there is density there. At Hopewell, we have R4 zoning on parcel 10, which is that thin strip on First Street where there are 11 lots or so with R4. So I think to the extent possible, we want to see density there. Now that's in the middle of 3 historic neighborhoods, so the master planning process involved those neighborhoods, so that conversation needs to continue too on what density looks like.
Granted, I grant you that.
I think,
but I'm trying to distinguish between Councilmember's concern for single-family housing versus ownership of housing, and to that end, is there something that Han can do to streamline, simplify, or otherwise make it easier for people to own housing, particularly housing that is not single-family, to own it?
Yeah, well, I think continue to enhance and market, spread the word on our down payment assistance and our shared equity. What are going to put people in a position to buy? Now, I understand what you're saying. I also think for non-single family homes, I think it's really important that we continue conversations with the development community about how a multifamily building might be condos.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. But what I'm trying to get at is there something we can do to simplify city code, to simplify our planning documents, so to encourage condos, ownable multifamily dwellings?
Mm-hmm. Perhaps. I think we maybe like to hear planning's thoughts on that and keep talking about it.
When is planning up? I want to ask them those
They're
questions. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Lucas, would you extend an invitation to anyone on Zoom?
Yes, if there are members of the public joining us online that would like to speak to this budget, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can do that by clicking the Reactions tab or the More tab. You can also send a chat to the meeting host to let us know you'd like to speak. And I see one hand raised right now.
Okay, let's go to the gallery first. So we have someone who would like to comment. Please state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
All righty. Hello. So many of you in this body may know me already. My name is Neil Goswami, and I am the newest member of the Monroe County Environmental Commission. This comment is meant to be an introduction, not a full presentation. Following the policy enacted by the Parks Board, many Bloomingtonians are forced to ask themselves, are we doing enough to help our unhoused neighbors? I'm now working with a local nonprofit, spearheading solutions to economic and environmental challenges in relation to the unhoused community and affordable eco-housing options. Blue Bee Ecological Endeavors, or BBEE, is a 501c3 organization preparing proposals for both a sanctioned crisis campsite and a tiny home eco-village that will provide entry-level green-collar jobs. This is being done as part of their holistic, affordable housing program. Blue Bee is working with eco-architects, other groups, and concerned citizens, and will be organizing planning charrettes as part of a Living Homes conference. Mark Lakeman of Communitecture in Portland, Oregon City Repair Project will be presenting on Dignity Village, a long-standing transitional housing, intentional community built from reused materials, touted by Portland police as a peaceful site. The residents pay $50 a month to live in tiny homes situated by the city's leaf composting operation on city property. Dignity Village is mostly self-sustaining and doesn't draw upon a lot of government resources. Blue Bee Holistic Affordable Housing will be integrating urban agriculture, solar power, and cottage industry as a means to generate income to maintain the project and provide green jobs for the economic refugees we intend to house. We'll be submitting budgets and logistical specifics to county and city government and look forward to collaborating with you to realize this progressive and vital program. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and that information. Mr. Lucas, we have one
On
taker.
Zoom, we have Jen Pearl.
Okay. Ms. Pearl, please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, or BEDC, I'm here to speak in support of housing investments as you consider the city budget, which relates to HAND as well as several other departments. The BEDC is a nonprofit that advances economic development strategy and the retention, expansion, and attraction of quality jobs across all of Monroe County. Housing is a critical element of quality of place. It's also one of the areas of focus in our Economic Vitality Project to ensure that Monroe County, Bloomington, Ellettsville all become the community of choice for employers, innovators, individuals, and families. Housing costs and availability remain a challenge, especially for single-family homes. According to the Indiana Association of Realtors, Monroe County's July median year-to-date sales price for homes was over $290,000. That compares to over $193,000 in Owen County and $175,000 in Lawrence County. Our home sales inventory has also remained low. Workers and employers both lose out due to lack of attainable housing. Monroe County's largest employers report pulling half of their employees from outside of the county. Commuting employees pay more in transit and in time when moving outward to find attainable housing. This challenges employers that are seeking staff, and commuting has an environmental impact. Bloomington also loses out on the income taxes of these individuals, which are paid based on where they live. We look forward to seeing the growth of housing of all needed types, especially for the workforce, at Hopewell and elsewhere across the community. Thank you for considering these investments.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Pearl. Any further comment in the gallery? In the chambers? Any online? Okay, we're back to council. All right, any comments on this budget? Is there a motion then?
I move that the council recommends inclusion of the HAND department budget as presented within the relevant salary ordinance and appropriation ordinance for consideration.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Councilmember Flaherty?
Yes.
Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Scambalori?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
And Volin?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is adopted 9-0. Thank you, Mr. Zodi. We will move on now to Economic and Sustainable Development, and presenting is Holly Warren. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you have, pardon me, 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Holly Warren. I'm the Interim Director of Economic and Sustainable Development, or ESD. I'm also the department's Assistant Director for the Arts. It's my pleasure to present ESD's 2024 budget request for your consideration. I want to thank the Mayor's Office and the Controller team for their help preparing our budget. I also want to thank our former ESD Director, Alex Crowley, and the amazing current ESD staff for their support. This is my 4th week in the interim role, and they have been indispensable in bringing me up to speed on their current work and their plans for 2024. They are the true experts in their fields: sustainability, small business development, and transportation demand management, or TDM. They will be on hand to help answer any questions you have about their current and proposed programs, and I can do the same for the arts. This evening, I'm going to highlight some recent ESD accomplishments and goals for 2024. I'm also going to summarize the significant changes in our proposed 2024 budget. All right. So our mission is to cultivate a resilient community built on shared prosperity, inclusive economic opportunity, environmental stewardship, and a thriving arts and culture ecosystem. In other words, we enhance the quality of life and place for all residents in Bloomington, with a particular emphasis on underserved populations. As you know, ESD leverages a number of funding sources to accomplish its goals, including those listed here. The 2024 funding request you'll see this evening includes the first two funds you see listed, the General Fund and the Economic Development Local Income Tax, or ED-LIT Fund. So a little bit more about us. There are 8 full-time staff positions in ESD. Currently, we are operating as a team of 7 who, as I mentioned before, focus on environmental and economic sustainability, support for arts and culture, entrepreneurship development, small business support, and more extensive economic development projects. Since last year's presentation, we have welcomed 2 new awesome team members, Dita La Rosa, our Assistant Director for Small Business Development, and Sean Maya, our Assistant Director of Sustainability. It is my distinct honor to serve alongside these dedicated public servants to focus on their long-scale initiatives and the myriad duck-sized horse challenges that come with the day-to-day. Before I get into the details of our 2023 accomplishments and our proposed 2024 budget, I would like to reflect on this moment in time and share how it informs ESD's current work and our goals for 2024. We continue to benefit from a federal administration substantially better aligned with our priorities. ESD intends to continue to successfully pursue and secure federal funding this year and next. We also appreciate Council's ongoing support of ED-LIT, which, as you will see later in my presentation, will allow us to take significant strides to implement the Climate Action Plan, among other priorities. Despite these opportunities, we continue to face significant hurdles that prevent our city from thriving as a model, innovative, and resilient community. The climate crisis is affecting all aspects of our lives, particularly devastating those of us at lower income levels least able to absorb climate impacts. Inflationary pressures and increased material costs are also significant and real, impacting people and businesses and causing hardships across the community. On top of this, we find ourselves at odds with some actions taken by the Indiana legislature, including the SB 1 law taking effect last week. This and the passing of laws preventing health care for transgendered youth put our population's health and safety at risk and deter talented individuals from moving to our community to contribute to its economic growth. We face a challenging present and an uncertain future. In spite of this, ESD is keen to navigate the critically important years and decades ahead. My colleagues and I are committed to taking action to help our community thrive. Here are some of the ways we have manifested that work through 2023 ESD initiatives. I want to note what I'm about to talk about is a mere slice of our overall work. So starting with arts and culture, we have worked diligently to advertise art grant opportunities to a larger and more diverse population. As a result of this effort, the number of applications to our 2023 Arts Project grant cycle nearly doubled, going from 35 to 67. Roughly 37% of the arts projects grants were awarded to artists of colors and artists identifying as LGBTQIA+. Our Emerging Artist Grant cycle opened last week, and we are anticipating a record number of applications for this opportunity. We were able to be this ambitious in our marketing and awarding because of the additional funds allocated to us as part of the 2023 ED-LIT Fund. We are grateful for this infusion. In November 22, we released an arts feasibility study that included several recommendations for invigorating arts and culture in Bloomington. Among the recommendations was the establishment of more spaces for artists to create and exhibit work. To begin tackling this initiative, we have partnered with Secretly Group to set up temporary artist studios for 4 local emerging artists to create work. As part of this program, artists will showcase their work at this Friday's Gallery Walk. We invite you to join us to see the results of this project, which is merely the first step of establishing more makerspaces across the city. Our small but mighty sustainability team continues to make strides in their initiatives focused on energy conservation, renewable energy, and waste reduction. Their work has helped establish Bloomington as a model in sustainability for the rest of the state and, I'd bargain, much of the nation. We have created several successful programs to reduce energy burdens on residents and institutions alike. We have provided rebates and low-interest loans to 4 residents to invest in solar and energy efficiency upgrades in their home. We have also completed 12 solar installations at community institutions as part of the Solar Energy Efficiency and Lighting Program, which provides grants to nonprofits and small businesses investing in energy efficiency systems on their facilities. By the end of 2023, the program will have provided $645,000 in grants to local organizations. Additionally, we have provided a $100,000 grant and 300 solar panels to Bloomington Housing Authority for a solar power generating system on Walnut Woods apartment units. And in an effort to support businesses that produce and distribute healthy food in Monroe County, we have executed grant agreements with Hoosier Hills Food Bank and Mother Hubbard's Cupboard to support their efforts to distribute locally grown food to low-income residents. Our climate action plan strives to ensure all Bloomington residents have access to safe, affordable, and low-carbon transportation options that support healthy, active lifestyles. To make this possible, we created a transportation demand management program to review single occupancy vehicle, or SOV, travel. We've developed the Go Bloomington initiative to encourage residents to take and track their SOV alternative trips and to build awareness about sustainable mobility options in our community. The initiative to get the word out about Go Bloomington is impressive. We're promoting Go Bloomington at IU men's and women's basketball games and successfully launched the Hoosier Carpool Karaoke Series, which is screened at athletic events to encourage folks to register for the program. Go Bloomington has registered 1,444 individuals to the city's TDM program to date, and we are continuing to advance marketing initiatives to reach new groups of participants, including local businesses like Catalent, hotels, and MCCSC students, teachers, and parents. As we continue to ramp up participation in Go Bloomington, we'll turn our attention to developing solid performance measures for the program. This will include tracking the total number of SOV alternative trips taken and user feedback as we head towards Go Bloomington's September 6th one-year anniversary. ESD continues to focus on making Bloomington a great place to work and build a career. In order to encourage entrepreneurial growth, we have entered into agreements with Ivy Tech and the Dimension Mill to provide workforce and entrepreneurship training. We have also continued to conduct outreach to local businesses to ensure they have the resources and support networks they need to survive and thrive. And, as I'm sure you'll recall, we came to an agreement to close portions of Kirkwood Avenue and install parklets at businesses around downtown in order to further COVID recovery and economic growth. 2 weeks ago, we covered the barriers of all 6 parklets with original artworks by local artists. This doesn't just solve the issues of unattractive bright orange barriers. This has helped our initiative to create an even stronger sense of identity and place in the city. It makes us distinctly Bloomington. We have continued to collaborate on the implementation of the city's $3.5 million Economic Development Administration grant to fund a Trades District Technology Center, and we are happy to share that the bid package for the center is now live. We anticipate selecting a contractor for the project in the coming weeks and breaking ground on the center in early October. We are deeply involved in plans for the development of the Hopewell site, a once-in-a-century project that will create significant housing and other opportunities in Bloomington. We contributed to the creation of the RFI for 3 blocks in Hopewell and ensured that it included principles of sustainable development, design excellence, and affordability. We will do the same for future RFIs released in relation to the development. Okay, so this is just a tiny slice again of a number of long-term goals the ESD team is currently focused on. It serves as a reflection of a fantastic base of arts and culture, sustainable practices, and entrepreneurial efforts that have long existed in Bloomington. However, there is still much to do. We're an ambitious bunch and have plans to grow our work to honor the potential of the community and its residents in 2024. Starting again with Arts and Culture for 24, I am keen to use the arts as a way to build Bloomington's unique identity and to foster the creation of more artwork that reaches all our residents and that inspires community connections, joy, and surprise. I'm of course also excited to pay more local artists along the way. To do this, we propose to grow a comprehensive downtown public art program that includes public, visual, and performing artworks. Not only will a centralized plan shape Bloomington's unique identity, it will contribute positively to downtown Bloomington's cultural and economic development and increase Bloomington's regional and national visibility. And at the recommendation of the 2022 Arts Feasibility Study, next month we will release a revised public art master plan. This is going to act as a toolkit for neighborhoods and small businesses to initiate their own public art projects to bolster their sense of community and creativity. And we don't just want to give our residents a roadmap to do this work. We're working to create a new grant program to support this initiative in 2024 as well. We'll continue to grow our sustainability initiatives in alignment with our climate action plan, with particular emphasis on the risks of climate change to our most vulnerable populations. We'll create a Beat the Heat program in collaboration with Indiana University to inform, prepare, and protect residents from extreme heat. We'll install shelters at 2 bus stops to increase ridership and protect residents from high heat and rain. We'll also aim to plant 100 trees along corridors to protect citizens from extreme heat and to improve air and water quality. We'll continue to boost residential engagement with sustainability through the use of the Zero in Bloomington website and launch 2 community group challenges and other incentives for participation. We'll also engage with local partners, including Ivy Tech, to develop a workforce training and apprenticeship program targeting 50 workers within the clean energy sector in order to build workforce resilience. Our TDM program will continue to play a significant role in our sustainability effort. In 2024, we'll continue to develop programs to reduce the number of single-occupant vehicle trips by supporting the formation of 25 carpools and the formation of 5 interested van pool groups. We'll continue this and other incentives to get more folks registered for and using the Go Bloomington program, and we'll continue to develop performance measures and an impact model of TDM efforts on SOV travel. I have learned a lot of new acronyms in the past 3 weeks. We'll also continue to empower our workforce and support the success of innovative businesses and entrepreneurs in Bloomington. We will develop and issue a quarterly newsletter for Bloomington businesses, focusing on marginalized community-owned businesses to share networking, tax rebate, and grant opportunities. To support our residents in reaching their highest potential in the workforce and as entrepreneurs, we'll continue to provide funds to support job training and workforce re-entry for at least 50 participants through extant programs, including Reboot at the Mill. In partnership with multiple city and community partners, we will develop a long-term plan for Kirkwood closures and other outdoor commercial infrastructure to provide predictability to business and community stakeholders. And finally, we will continue our work on major economic development programs and investments to position Bloomington for economic vibrancy for the next decades. We'll provide the infrastructure necessary for folks to live and work in the trades and Hopewell areas by aligning with existing talent attraction efforts offered by our community partners, including the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation. Through these efforts and others, our work will be focused on expanding housing and workforce opportunities, continuing the strong wage growth we have seen in Bloomington over the past several years, and help improve the built environment we experience every day. Now we'll talk about numbers. The Department of Economic and Sustainable Development's total budget request for 2024 is $7,017,300. $7,017,308. This is a decrease of $237,867, or 3%, from 2023. What follows are category-specific highlights of significance. In Category 1, personnel costs, the request is for $786,501, which is an increase of $19,265, or 2.51%, from 2023. We are not proposing to add any additional staff positions at this time. In Category 2 for supplies, we have a 2024 request for $10,400, which is an increase of $2,000, or 23.8%, over last year to help us shore up supplies for community art projects. Category 3 is where we have the majority of our budget. ESD's Category 3 request is $6,220,407, which is a decrease of $259,132, or about 4%, from 2023. We are requesting Category 3 funding from two sources. For general fund, our request is $540,307, and our ED Lit request is $5,680,100. There is no change between the amount of money we requested last year for 23 and for 24 in ED Lit. Finally, we don't have any Category 4 capital requests. I'd like now to highlight the significant changes in our Category 3 general fund budget, as well as our proposed spending of ED Lit funds, and we're going to start with the general fund. The general fund increase is driven primarily by the following. We're asking for an addition of $10,000 for tax abatement and enterprise zone consulting services, an addition of $70,000 in operations and maintenance services related to the city's solar infrastructure, including the solar energy monitoring platform, an addition of $60,000 for the Climate Action Plan dashboard subscription, and an increase of $25,000 for Bloomington Arts Commission grants to accommodate the growing grant interest. ESD has more granular information on the increases here that I can share with you separately. Again, we are requesting the same amount of funds from ED Lit as we did in 23. ED Lit continues to allocate transformational funding for the implementation of our Climate Action Plan. The funds will also enable us to support workforce and economic development and support the implementation of public art programs in collaboration with small businesses and neighborhoods, and provide more grants and professional development opportunities for emerging artists. In addition to the $1.87 million we've advocated for these expenses, $3.81 million is targeted for Bloomington Transit. Focusing on Climate Action Plan implementation funding, you will see here that funding for energy and the built environment and transportation reflect the majority of the Climate Action Plan implementation support, with important, if smaller, amounts allocated to proposed waste mitigation, climate economy, and ecosystem and green space projects. To recap, here are the 2024 ESD budget requests by fund and in total. We're requesting $1,337,208 from the general fund and $5,680,100 from ED Lit, for a total of $7,017,308. Thank you again for your time and attention this evening. ESD is committed to our mission to cultivate a resilient community built on shared prosperity, inclusive economic opportunity, environmental stewardship, and a thriving arts and culture system. Since beginning my interim role, I've thought a lot about the meaning of the phrase economic and sustainable development. How is that translated by folks not involved in the everyday minutia of city government and economic management? How the heck did these three buckets of work get clobbered together? Here is my answer, at least what I've landed on for today. Each of us in ESD are all working toward a common goal of creating a higher quality of life in Bloomington, a life that is healthier because of our sustainability initiatives, a life that is enriched and connected to community because of cultural opportunities, a life that is bolstered by the ability to develop professional skills and open a business that will thrive. Indeed, we are all pushing toward this higher quality, and what I love most is that my amazing colleagues are doing this with the most vulnerable members of our community in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We welcome your questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director. presentation. We'll go to council questions. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Did you say Sims or Smith? I'm sorry. Sims, okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warren, for your presentation. And I will be sending questions, as we've already discussed before. But you mentioned the low-interest loans to lower-income families with regard to solar installation. Can you be a little bit more specific with that? Tell us, for example, how many families have we helped? What is, and when you say low income, what is the threshold there that we're talking about? Where are some of these funds coming from?
Again, I'm going to defer to my colleague, Sean Maya.
That's
She's
fine.
the true expert in this.
Thank you.
What you're referring to is our Bloomington Green Home Improvement Program. Residents can apply for a loan for projects such as solar installations, energy efficiency projects, and geothermal projects. They can receive a $1,000 rebate from our program, and that funding comes from ED-LIT. And so far this year, we've had 4 applicants.
Okay. Have any been approved so far?
4 have been approved so far.
Oh, okay. 4 applicants that have been approved to do that.
Yes, right.
Okay. And what is about the cost for the average installation for solar?
The average
And I know
cost
it,
for-
and I know it differs,
It
but
varies
yeah.
depending on the size, but I would say the average is about $25,000, at least $25,000 for a solar installation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. So one of your goals for next year is to grow a downtown public art program, including the creation of 5 new public artworks, which is a great goal.
Ambitious.
I'm wondering how that's different from the BEAD, the BEAD district, and whether this is kind of a continuation of that, or is BEAD still running concurrently, or can you speak to that?
Sure. So I think BEAD, the Bloomington Entertainment and Arts District, is integral to that. I think we will definitely be considering the strategic plan that was created for that back in 2019 and then just kind of unfortunately abandoned during the COVID pandemic. But as we are thinking about where we are going to put these pieces of public art and who they are targeting, we are definitely thinking of it as part of a larger holistic vision for how inviting people to come experience these public artworks downtown is integral to then going into business and putting money into those businesses. We are already in conversations with Downtown Bloomington, Inc. to think strategically about what this program will look like.
Okay, so does it mesh with the BEAD plan that was done in 2019?
I would say there are definitely some things from the BEAD plan and the strategic initiatives and goals within that plan that we will be pulling from, but I think a lot is also different now. I think we have a lot of different factors that we want to work with, so I think you'll see maybe like a 50-50 new things versus 50-50 things that are reflective of what the BEAD plan from 2019 had strived for.
Okay, thanks. And then another goal you had was to create a Beat the Heat program with collaboration from IU and including bus shelters. So I'm curious about the collaboration with IU and about the bus shelters, are they enclosed? Do they have air conditioning? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have been in collaboration with Dr. Dana Habib. She's a professor with the IU School of Informatics. She has created a Beat the Heat program before for the cities of Richmond and Clarksville. And it's really a comprehensive approach to looking at extreme heat and how it affects your community. It includes a lot of collaboration with residents and getting them involved and helping to map our urban heat island. And this also dovetails with the climate resilience plan that I'm currently working on. We're going to have our second community workshop in October, where we're going to be looking at adaptive strategies to the climate risks and vulnerabilities that were prioritized at our first workshop back in July. And part of that is looking at extreme heat and looking at the areas in our city that are most vulnerable to extreme heat. And so the Beat the Heat program is going to look at areas that are in need of additional tree plantings, looking at areas, especially in low-income population areas, where there's bus stops that do not have shelters, where people are standing in the sun waiting for a bus.
Okay,
So we'll
my time is up, so
Oh, okay.
I can follow up with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember Scambilleri.
Yes, thank you. I'd appreciate a chance to talk a little bit more about the Trades District. I appreciate the work we've done with the Tech Center and so forth. But in some ways, the Trades District has been built out a little more slowly than we originally anticipated. Could you talk more about challenges we're encountering? I note also that it's included in your goals to sell at least 2 lots. Are there deals in the works? Could you talk more about that?
Sure. So I think I do acknowledge, yes, there were some things that were slowed down in the past couple of years, but we are very happy now. We have appointed John Fernandez. He is an employee of the mill to kind of oversee all development in the Trades District. So having this one person whose role is solely to oversee that development has enabled us to be able to expedite both the construction of the tech center, but also for the development of other plots in that land. I don't want to speak too specifically on his behalf on what is in play for those other 2 plots, but we'd be happy to report back more data on that for you.
Thanks. I'll follow up with questions.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. On the one slide, I just wanted to clarify, there was several things said where money was allocated, and one of them was transportation. So explain to me what, I'm thinking that, did we not fund transportation in another piece of the budget? So I'm wondering what does that have to do with ESD?
I just want to clarify, you're speaking specifically to Bloomington Transit as opposed to transportation demand management with
If you want to flip,
sustainability.
if you want to see that slide, you can flip that up for me if you want, and then Ms. Warren will know, and I won't be so confusing.
Okay.
There was a,
Okay. Is this the slide?
Oh.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right.
It
And it
was
was
a
a
table.
24 goal? Oh, it was a table.
it was a table, and it had all the items on there, and one of them was transportation, and it wasn't that table. Yep, there you go. I'm not sure I understand $410,000 for transportation there.
Sean, I might ask you to answer that. Thank you.
Sure. It's the same amount that was proposed for 2023. It's majority of it is the TDM budget. So it's for the ride matching software, marketing, promotional events, and also $250,000 of that is fleet and equipment electrification. So
Say louder.
fleet and equipment electrification is $250,000 of that. That is converting our gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, and also converting our gas-powered equipment over to electric equipment. So we're doing that with Parks and Rec.
That's an ESD?
That's what we're funding, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So Parks
Okay,
and-
I'm not sure I understand why it goes in that budget and not in facilities and the other parts that Mr. Wason deals with.
It's the same amount that was approved last year, so we proposed it again this year. We proposed the same amount this year.
Okay.
For that.
And then while I have you, explain to me what the ESD, what's waste mitigation
Sure.
related to you and to this department? I'm not sure I understand that either.
Sure, waste refers to composting. And so last year, we had funded a Compost Up Downtown program. And so we don't have a composting company at the moment, but I'm working with the Monroe County Solid Waste District to find one. We should be issuing an RFQ soon, where we're going to be working together to possibly subsidize a program where we can haul waste, food waste. And so.
And I'm going to ask the same confusing question is, doesn't
Sure.
it go in another department? You know what I mean?
I
It
think
seems
it's
like,
because
I'm not sure I understand why it's in this department.
I think it's composting is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and so that's why we want to fund that in sustainability.
Councilmember Smith, your time's expired.
And
Thank you very
I just
much.
needed to introduce myself. I'm Sean Mia. I'm the Assistant Director of Sustainability. Thank you.
And I just want to reemphasize, as I mentioned in my presentation, all the TDM initiatives are part of the larger climate action master plan, and so that's why you're seeing some of those budget lines fall within ESD.
Other questions from council on this budget, the Economic and Sustainable Development budget? I'll take one. Thank you for your presentation, Director Warren. I asked this perennial question, and it has to do with your department's expenditures and prioritization of local food. And I see that something that you covered was relevant to that, but specifically, your department under Mr. Crowley facilitated the farm stop. I wondered is that still something ongoing administered by your department, or is that self-sustaining at this point?
My understanding is when that initiative was started, there was a 2-year contract that went through ESD to fund the position for someone who was affiliated with ESD to get that initiative and the storefront off the ground. That ended, I believe, at the end of last fiscal year. I might be wrong about that. It might have been the previous fiscal year, but at this point, the farm stop is self-sustaining, and there is not a budget line in our department to fund that any longer.
Okay. You probably don't have this number offhand, but sure. Is it possible to get the number devoted to local food?
Absolutely, I
by
can
your
work
department, or perhaps it is available?
Sure, yes.
Looks like your assistant director may have.
I have that. For 2023, we had 30,000 devoted for local food.
Okay.
And so that's where we're funding Mother Hubbard's Cupboard and Hoosier Hills Food Bank.
I see. Okay. All right. I think that's all I've got. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll now go to the public. Mr. Lucas, do you mind extending the invitation?
Yes. If members of the public are watching on Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand. You can find the raise hand button in your control bar under the Reactions tab or the More tab. You can also send a chat to the meeting host to let us know you'd like to speak. I see one hand raised at the moment.
Okay, well, let's go first to council chambers. Is there anyone in council chambers that would like to comment on the Economic and Sustainable Development budget? Not seeing anyone. We'll go to the Zoom caller.
Yes.
Say your name. You have 2 minutes.
We have Jen Pearl.
Welcome, Ms. Pearl.
Thank you very much. I am back. On behalf of the BEDC, I'm here to speak in support of economic development investments as you consider the budget. Economic development fosters conditions for prosperity in a community. We know that communities thrive when they have a shared vision for their future, they lean into what makes them great, and they coordinate their investments to realize that future. So I'm here back to comment in support of investments for economic development. Our community has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to launch ourselves into a strong future. We're a hub on the innovation corridor that runs from Indy to Crane. Following investments such as the U.S. CHIPS and Science Act and Indiana Ready, the BEDC is already seeing an uptick in business attraction projects in such industries as tech, microelectronics, and defense. One just did a ribbon cutting in the Trades District a few weeks ago. But these opportunities don't just land on their own. The City of Bloomington needs to invest in economic development to ensure that we are capturing as many opportunities as possible for employment and wage growth. First is support for economic development projects through major economic development projects such as Catalent's recent investment of $350 million in Bloomington. It also means working with ESD, planning, and utilities to ensure that sites have the infrastructure, zoning incentives, and streamlined processes that enable their targeted development, whether in the Trades District or larger sites like Fullerton Pike. Second is support for business relations through ESD to ensure we continue to develop in our community, ability to welcome employment and investment growth. These can connect with efforts such as sustainability, DEI, and the arts as well. According to the IBRC, employment in our target industries can grow by 250 jobs per year across the community through our focused efforts. But it's critical to foster future employment growth through these investments, as I already mentioned. As we've seen
Ms.
in our
Pearl,
history,
your time has
districts
expired.
change. Thank you so much for your consideration.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Lucas, is there anyone else appearing on Zoom?
No, not that I see.
Okay, we'll come back to council then for comments on the Economic and Sustainable Development Department budget. Councilmember Volin.
Brief sort of philosophical comment based on the turnover in ESD and the turnover of new administration. I recall vividly Councilmember Rallo's original bringing of the sustainability ordinance in 2006, and that's when I first learned the definition that he put in the ordinance, that sustainability is economic, environmental, and social. And when I think this council put pressure on the administration then to do something more about sustainability, the term was grafted into the Economic Development Department, when it seems that really, and I still believe this, sustainability should be a director level position like innovation. So I don't know what to make of it. I hope that, I mean, I appreciate what the current staff of ESD does to promote sustainability, and it's great. I just, if it were a director, if sustainability itself were a separate position, I would assume that an economic development department would be making an effort to do so sustainably, that all the departments are trying to be sustainable, but that there be somebody at the equal level to the director to ensure that sustainability is a part of everything we do. Certainly, I think that it dovetails now with a much greater focus on climate. Maybe it's rearranging deck chairs. I'd like to think that it's not, but I do think that in the new year, in the new term with the new administration, that the department's title and function be rethought, not a reflection at all on any particular employee of the department. It's more a high-level thing, but this is the appropriate moment to say it. I still think that we haven't done enough, as much as as Maya's doing, much as her predecessors have been doing. If the administration doesn't have that highest level focus, then I think we're all missing out. Other than that, I am pleased with the work of the ESD department, and I wish them continued good luck. Thank you.
Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to all the ESD staff, and especially Interim Director Warren, who did a wonderful job despite being thrown into the budget process late. My main concern is with transportation demand management, and it just seems to me in the last year it's mostly been a matter of publicity, which of course is a good thing, but I really am eager to see some reduction of vehicle miles traveled in single occupancy vehicles and some actual results for that project or program area. I also noted that there's a $10,000 increase for consulting on tax abatements and enterprise zones, and I will be asking follow-up questions to see exactly what that's about. Elsa Charlotte Zitlow would be mad at me because she's always talking about consulting fees, so I'm going to get to the bottom of why we need that. But overall, I'm very pleased with the budget and excited about the continued investments through ED Lit for sustainability and the new downtown arts program. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warren, for the presentation, too. And I, too, think you kind of did a good job just getting started. I remember when I joined this council, my first meeting was budget meeting, very first meeting. But my comment is, I think we're doing some really good things. My view of the budget in many cases is about reprioritizing some of the dollars that you have as opposed to increasing and grabbing more dollars and doing other stuff. But what I also want to hear more about, and particularly from ESD, maybe in combination with innovation, is incentivizing our citizens. I think there are some things we can do in the areas of composting, in the area of some other things that would help incentivize people to do what it is that we're trying to get them to do. It might take a small investment. We've talked about this for a couple of years. Maybe there's a small thing that we could supply to certain folks to get that rolling. But I'm interested in looking for incentives, and I'll send some questions your way as well. I don't know what this will cost, but I do know we can probably rearrange some funds in order to help meet some of our climate initiatives. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Smith.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to abstain, but I'm going to ask some follow-up questions to just clarify so I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I would like to say it was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Director Warren. There's a lot of good things that your department's doing. I have one gripe, but before I get to the gripe, you might be able to anticipate what it might be. I'd like to respond to Councilmember Volan because I think it's very interesting debate, and I think for some of us that have been around since the beginning of integrating sustainability in the early aughts, the question was, should it be placed in the mayor's office or should it be within economic and sustainable development? At the time, it wasn't sustainable development, it was economic development. Economic development seemed to be a good place for a couple of reasons. One is, prior to that, economic development was seen in a very narrow lens of essentially, growth in local industry attracted or created was beneficial to the community at large. That wasn't necessarily the case. It often just, economic development went to some key players within the community, and the wealth wasn't spread throughout the community. So that needed to be really revised and attended to. So that was one aspect of it that was welcome. The other is that just in an aggregate sense, the economic system is a driver for the ecological crisis. So we're hitting limits, like the climate limit is just one. It's symptomatic. Climate change is symptomatic of hitting limits. There are other limits that we're hitting, and that's because of the way we design the economy being economic and financial exponential growth wedded with a linear materials economy, not a closed loop. So those things seem to be, it seemed to be important then to house it in the economic, create sustainable development. And with my colleague, Isabel Piedmont-Smith, we advocated for a sustainability director, and that seemed to be, it's been very satisfactory. I think that overall, both Mayor Kruzan and Mayor Hamilton have taken sustainability very seriously and have done some very, very good things to turn our city into a more sustainable community and actually a model for others, and I credit them both for doing that. My one gripe, with 30 seconds remaining, is that I see a missed opportunity in really jump-starting a local food economy, which would build resilience of the community. Local food, I think, is something that, we import a lot of food. If we are self-sustaining, we protect land, we create jobs, and we feed the local community, and we have surplus for low-income people. And I think that more funds could be allocated for that. So I will be passing tonight just for that advocacy. So with that, do we have a motion?
Yes, you do. Just one moment. I move that the council recommends inclusion of the Economic and Sustainable Development Department budget as presented within the relevant salary ordinance and appropriation ordinance for consideration.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Abstain.
Rallo,
Abstain.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Smith,
Abstain.
Volin,
Yes.
and Flaherty.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is adopted 603. Thank you very much. You abstained, I abstained, and Councilmember Smith abstained.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's move on now to Community and Family Resources. The Director, Beverly Callender Anderson, presenting, and 15 minutes have been allocated. Welcome,
Thank you.
Ms. Callender Anderson.
Good evening. I'm Beverly Callender Anderson, Director of the Community and Family Resources Department. Thank you for this opportunity to present the department's 2024 budget request this evening. The Community and Family Resources Department helps to improve the quality of life in Bloomington by coordinating programs and services designed to strengthen community engagement and to increase the overall community capacity to address social issues, promoting engagement, enhancing community wellness, coordinating public safety education initiatives, and addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, and justice are a few of the ways CFRD staff work to promote and enhance quality of life for all Bloomington residents and visitors, and help to build a strong and vital community. CFRD operates with 9 full-time employees and currently with 5 interns. Our divisions include the Bloomington Volunteer Network, which is staffed by Michelle Moss, who joined us on a permanent full-time basis this year. We also welcomed Jimena Martinez Ruiz as the Latino Outreach Coordinator when the former coordinator, Josefa Madrigal, joined the staff of the Office of the Mayor. The Safe and Civil City program is under the direction of Shatoya Moss, and the After Hours Ambassador program is coordinated by Charles Culp. The department provides support to 7 commissions, the Council on Community Accessibility, and the Monroe County Domestic Violence Coalition. At the end of 2022, CFRD assumed responsibility for the Bloomington Human Rights Commission, which had been housed in the legal department. Earlier this year, the City of Bloomington and Monroe County government entered into an interlocal agreement to join their 2 human rights commissions, resulting in the newly formed Bloomington-Monroe County Human Rights Commission, which has oversight for all of Monroe County. Michael Shermas is giving excellent leadership to this newly formed commission, in addition to the Council for Community Accessibility. Marissa Parr-Scott coordinates activities for 2 commissions and, along with Aubrey Cedar, helps to keep our office running smoothly and our finances in order. In addition to the work of the divisions mentioned in the past 12 months, CFRD has provided leadership to shelter and housing insecurity working groups, Helping Bloomington Monroe, provided training for city, county, and retail personnel, coordinated 3 grant programs and the Local Income Tax Economic Equity Fund. CFRD staff have planned and implemented over 39 programs and coordinated the selection and presentation of 37 awards for excellence in community engagement and response. These programs and the awards are made possible through the support of corporate sponsorships and donations of nearly $140,000, for which we are grateful. I want to take a quick moment this evening to express my gratitude to the CFRD staff for taking on their roles with creativity, commitment, and compassion, and for working to ensure that our offerings are always educational, inspirational, and meaningful. They're a great group. CFRD began 2023 with 41 budget goals. I will highlight a few of our outcomes this evening. I mentioned Bloomington Monroe earlier. With support from the Bloomington Health Foundation, this online hub is becoming the go-to resource not only for people in need of help, but also those community helpers supporting them. This year, so far, CFRD has conducted 5 trainings for helpers, including an HBM on-the-go training for the Monroe County Fire Protection District, which helped firefighters learn to access the resource on their mobile devices and provide assistance on the spot to families in crisis. We are in the process of standing up 2 dedicated Helping Bloomington Monroe kiosks, one in the Monroe County Public Library and the other at Monroe County United Ministries. This will increase public access to Helping Bloomington Monroe. Working with Centerstone, we hosted Mental Health First Aid, Mental Health 101, and QPR training for 75 city, county, and retail staff. Mental Health First Aid and Mental Health 101 are pretty much what they sound like. Basic knowledge of mental health conditions, how to recognize symptoms, and respond in an emergency situation. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, and Respond, and helps learners know the appropriate ways to respond if they are confronted with someone who is suicidal. Participants who complete these sessions are not substitutes for mental health professionals, but they are equipped to help keep themselves and others safe until professionals arrive. The 2023 Be More Awards return to an in-person format this year and recognize 10 outstanding community volunteers. Through a partnership with the Community Foundation of Bloomington, Monroe County, each agency represented received $1,000 in honor of their volunteer service. The Commission on the Status of Black Males will be hosting a Black Male Summit for middle and high school male identifying students on September 14th. Returning to an in-person format at City Hall, the Commission anticipates an increase in participation from last year's 95 students, which it was a virtual format at that time. The Commission also hosted the Million Father March to welcome students on the first day of school. 45 adult mentors were present, a 15% increase over 2022. In the area of diversity, CFRD is partnering with the U.S. Department of Justice to host United Against Hate, a hate crimes outreach forum. That will take place September 7th here at in the council chambers of City Hall. We hope you all can join us. And we've also provided support to the Exodus Refugee Network as they've worked diligently to resettle individuals and families in Bloomington. By mid-June of this year, 78 individuals were resettled in Bloomington, representing Burma, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Syria, Iran, Eritrea, Honduras, Afghanistan, and Colombia. CFRD also coordinated multi-generational events for Black History and Latinx Heritage Months, and the 2023 Blackie Brown Arts Festival is returning to its original 2-day format on September 8th and 9th, with a gallery showing, film screenings, marketplace, and concert, all which highlight artists of color in our community. In the area of safety, civility, and justice, CFRD administered the Downtown Outreach Grant process and awarded $320,600 to 12 nonprofits working with Bloomington's unhoused residents or those at risk of becoming homeless. The budgeted $250,000 was supplemented by opioid settlement funds to enable recipients a greater chance at success. We also administered the new violence reduction grants, awarding $98,689 to 6 community-based efforts to prevent, intervene, and reduce violence in Bloomington. Based on our experiences with the Divided Communities Project out of the Moritz School of Law at the Ohio State University, members of the city's DCP team have worked with the Ohio-based group to provide education and support to other communities preparing for crises. Bringing the United Against Hate Forum to our community is one of the results of our continued work with the Divided Communities Project. Through a new partnership with South Central Community Action Agency, low-income residents who have been impacted by the local income tax increase will be assisted with medical debt elimination, housing costs such as rental deposits, late fees, property taxes, and food for medically specific diets. We also anticipate other initiatives to support those struggling with the cost of childcare and a menstrual equity program. I've named several community partners and collaborators who have worked with CFRD to serve the residents of Bloomington, and I want to take this opportunity to thank them for their willingness to work together with us to reach our common goals. And now I'll move on to CFRD's 2024 budget goals. And for the sake of time, I won't be sharing every departmental goal that appears in your packets, but we'll highlight a few. Helping Bloomington Monroe will increase public access by standing up an additional kiosk in a high-usage agency for a total of 3 public kiosks, making access to this resource easier for residents with limited resources. The Bloomington Volunteer Network will increase nominations by 20% as we are firmly back into our in-person format. CFRD will continue to coordinate 24 City Hall displays for local nonprofit organizations and city programs to help them promote community-based programs and resources. In the area of safety, civility, and justice, we're requesting an additional after-hours ambassador to increase the city's downtown presence after traditional business hours and to monitor the downtown for cleanliness, noise, persons in need, and to provide hospitality during major events. We will continue to coordinate the following grants: $250,000 in the downtown outreach grants, which will help to fund a minimum of 9 projects that will improve circumstances for residents who are unhoused or at risk of becoming homeless. A $100,000 reproductive health care grant will support persons able to give birth and getting emergency services needed to help guarantee they maintain control and autonomy over their reproductive health. And the third grant we'll administer is the $125,000 violence prevention grant to support community or neighborhood-based efforts to prevent, intervene, and reduce violence. Additionally, $1,060,016 in the Economic Equity Fund will mitigate the impact of the local income tax and expand equity for working families. In partnership with WFHB, our Latino Outreach Coordinator will produce 49 weekly episodes of Hola Bloomington, the community Spanish language public affairs program. She will also coordinate a holiday gift program for a minimum of 20 low-income Latinx families. CFRD will increase the use of ASL sign language interpreters at the department's public meetings and events to make them more accessible to residents who are hearing impaired, and will also work to increase attendance at the Community Council for Accessibility's Breaking Down the Barriers and Gather Around the Table by 20%. The Human Rights Commission will investigate complaints of discrimination in Bloomington and Monroe County and help negotiate settlements where appropriate. And the commission will also present 2 human rights awards recognizing individuals and groups who have made specific and significant contributions in improving civil rights, human relations, and civility in Monroe County. The Commission on the Status of Children and Youth will coordinate the Read for the Record in collaboration with MCCSC. Read for the Record is the world's largest shared reading experience that celebrates children's early language and social-emotional development. Volunteers will read to elementary students, and copies of the designated book will be donated to the school media centers and classrooms. The Community and Family Resources Department budget request is for $2,738,406. That reflects an increase of $428,694. Significant changes are in the area of Category 1 in the amount of $109,754, representing a new staff position and the cost of living increases for non-union staff. In Category 3, our request is $1,737,788, an increase of $317,240, and this reflects the increase in ED Lit for the Economic Equity Fund and an increase in instruction dues and subscriptions and grants. And this is our budget summary that shows what I just spoke of. And then the next slide is the budget by each fund. The 2024 Community and Family Resources Department request reflects increases that align with the stated goals of providing opportunities for engagement, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, creating a community environment based on a foundation of safety, civility, and justice, and providing support to commissions, boards, and councils. I want to thank you so much for your consideration of our 2024 budget. Also want to thank you all for your service, especially those who will not be serving next year. I've really enjoyed working with you all, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Director Calendar Anderson. We'll go to council questions, and we'll begin with Councilmember Piedmont Smith, followed by Councilmember Sims.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Calendar Anderson. I had a question about the Alternative Transportation Fund being used by your department. It looks like there's $15,000 budgeted just like last year. And if you explained it last year, I apologize, I don't remember.
I don't know if I was asked that question last year, and I also don't have an answer for you this year. I can find out. I'm not sure why that fund is there, but I'll find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm sorry, hold on.
Mr. Underwood.
Oh, Jeff.
Good evening. Jeff Underwood, City Controller. That's the participating youth participation budgeting program that CFRD has hosted for a number of years, and I know Beverly has can explain in more detail what that is, but that's where that's budgeted.
So is that program, the youth
So the youth
participatory budgeting, still ongoing?
No, it is not. The youth
Participatory?
participatory budgeting program, thank you, is not ongoing. And so maybe that was some funding that was left from that, yeah. So we're not doing that program in 2024.
Okay, so that money is not needed by your department?
I'm not going to say it's not needed. But it's not needed for that particular program, I will say that.
Okay, so maybe you could get back to us about the use of that money?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then I wanted to ask about staffing. You'd mentioned one new staff position, but it looked like in your
The org chart.
In the org chart, there are two. There's an assistant for human rights. Is that not you?
So there is an assistant for human rights. It's a part-time position because when we took over the Human Rights Commission, legal kept the clerical support for that position. And so we will be absorbing that in 2024, and then the new after-hours ambassador.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Ms. Calendar Anderson. And I will send some more questions, as I will all the other department heads. But one of the things that I really, truly want to emphasize over the course of this budget, and we've talked a lot about it and did some training, made some investments in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. But one of the things I've not really been satisfied with is when we went through the training with the department heads and us, I'm not satisfied in that it's filtering down to our entire staff throughout the city. And I don't know how best, I'm not saying that's your job. I'd like to give it to you, but I know it's not my call. But one of my questions might have to do with if you have any ideas on how best to just monitor that that's been happening. And this isn't a slight toward any department here, but I know we're so busy doing other things that that might be something that's falling or not. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I can talk about CFRD specifically. One of the things that, in addition to the trainings that HR provides, we also have our monthly staff meetings and an annual retreat, and diversity, inclusion, and equity is just a part of everything that we do. And so we talk about these things all the time. We have, when I run across trainings or other staff run across trainings, we've done several online trainings, and so that's all a part of what we do. In answer to your question, I think that other department heads would probably also know the kinds of things that their departments are doing. And so if there were just a way to document that, then we could see how many hours are being put into diversity, equity, and inclusion training, that may not be what's coming out of HR. It may not be, something that's overall. And then we could also share those resources that we have, which I've done with other department heads.
Yes, and thank you. And some department heads are, it's, no one's at fault, I'm not saying that.
Right.
But it has to be a higher priority, I think, for this city to get to where we want. And I think examples like what you just stated on our meetings, our retreats, or ways that you get it done through your department, maybe we could share that with others. I think, and I don't really want to particularly beat it to death, but we've got a lot of city employees, and I'm talking about even down to the levels of the man or woman that's working at the counter at Cascades, the person that's in the truck, the sanitation truck that slams our containers and, and it has to help the disabled lady down the street. These are the interactions from our city, things that I think is most important. And I just don't want that lost, in particular since, at least in this position, I won't be here after this year. But I think that's very, very important for this community. And I just want to have some, or my time is up. I'll send questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I hope everyone heard what I was saying, though. I really true. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Scamilleri.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm always in awe of the range of things you include in your portfolio. In particular, I'm interested in hearing more about the ED Lit Economic Equity Fund. Did I understand correctly that that's kind of co-administered with SCAP?
Yes.
Got it. And can you you gave some examples there, but can you talk in more detail about what that's been actually been funding this year?
Actually, it hasn't started yet. I mean,
Okay.
but we have our memorandum of understanding signed, and it will be funding. But first of all, it will be funding medical debt elimination. And so we know that so many people acquire medical debt, and then that then affects their housing, that affects something else. And so because of the increase in the income tax and people having less disposable income, we thought helping to eliminate that medical debt and then getting them into the programs that CAP already offers to keep from getting back into debt in that way, whether they're uninsured or whatever caused the problem in the first place would be the first thing, so medical debt elimination. The second thing would be housing-related costs like rental deposits and things that can't be paid for through the trustees, rental deposits or arrears and property taxes and things like that.
Are application fees included there?
We have not talked about application fees,
Okay,
but yeah,
cool.
but we can. And then we're also looking at, and we don't have the agreement on this yet, but the next thing we've been talking about is helping with child care costs, because those are sort of the three things that are so costly to people.
Okay. Thank you for that. And can you talk in more detail about the violence reduction grants? What has been funded there?
So we funded, oh gosh, I wish I had brought that. We funded 6, and I can get you all 6 of the agencies, but 6 organizations, and they were anything from, I know that at the Summit Hill Bloomington Housing Authority, we funded what's called the Cool Kids Club, and it's a way of, utilizing the playground at Crestmont, thinking that, then the thinking is that if it's used and there's more use there, any elements that are not desirable will not be there. So bringing more use to that, but also giving kids between the ages of 7 and 17 a productive way to spend their time after school. We funded cameras for one agency, for their agency because they were having problems with break-ins and things like that. And I'll get you the rest of them. Those are the 2 I can remember off the top of my head.
Nope, that's great, and I'll follow up with more questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? I have one, or maybe 2. Thanks for your presentation. I was looking at, yesterday I was looking at Human Rights Commission hate incidents reports over time, and I noticed that the general trend is declining, although now that it's expanded to include the county, I assume that's going to increase. Any is too many, of course, and we've had that terrible attack, anti-Asian attack that was a federal hate crime, I understand, and the assailant was prosecuted for that. So that trend is good. I wondered about looking at the crime report that came out this year, where domestic assault is up 24% since 2020. And I wondered, do we fund agencies within the Monroe County Domestic Violence Coalition? Or
Yes, we do.
We do.
Not through the Domestic Violence Coalition. That's a group that gets together to support one another, but we do fund domestic violence-related agencies through the Downtown Outreach Grant.
So my question is the need being addressed, since there seems to be an increase in domestic assault?
Yeah, I probably would need to confer with Carrie at Middleway House and some of the others. I don't really have an answer for that right now. I mean, like I said, I know that we have funded programs through Downtown Outreach and also through the Violence Reduction Grant. We funded Middleway House for a teen program. That's another one I thought of, but to reach out to teens. But you know, how well it's being addressed and whether, you know, other governmental entities other than the city are addressing them, I don't know.
Okay.
And I can try to find out.
Okay, if any other further information would be great to know. So if there are no other questions, we will go to the public.
Yes, if members of the public would like to comment on this budget, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can find the raise hand button in your control bar under the Reactions tab or the More tab. You can also send a chat to the meeting host to let us know you'd like to speak. I do see 2 takers on Zoom at the moment.
Okay, let's start in council chambers. Mr. MG, welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Chairman Rallo. This is Christopher MG from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I'd just like to thank Ms. Callender Anderson on her presentation and her leadership at that department. This is kind of a coda to Mr. Spoonmore's comments last night, and I don't want to make platitudes, but if you look at the safety, civility, and justice portion of your memos, there is the after-hours ambassadors, where I know Mr. Kolb, who does a lot of that, and I just want to commend his work and what he's been doing with outreach with the business community through de-escalation, through a lot of being mindful of the services. He collaborates with the Bloomington Police Department, with social service providers as well. I regularly meet with him, and I find him a big resource here and something that I'm happy to see another position within that framework added, and would hope we would consider even more of these as we only talk about the budget in these sort of narrow veins. It's important that, you know, when we're talking public safety, it kind of goes to this department as well and what they've been able to do on that with that outreach and sort of that de-escalation, which the department did as well, a fine training with regards to that. So I think it's important we sort of look at that specifically as other means of public safety, having that person on the beat who's there, can make business owners via text be there, and just adding a few more of these, I think, has really enhanced the safety of our community, not just for residents, but for visitors as well. And I just want to bring that to your attention. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your comment. Let's go now to the first in the queue on Zoom.
Topic.
Welcome, Mr. Topic.
Hi,
You
good
have 2
evening,
minutes.
everyone. On behalf of Downtown Bloomington, we appreciate the professionalism of all the departments and appreciate the mayor and city council with all the work that you do. It's been impressive listening tonight and all the different topics and initiatives. So thank you very much for your focus and help with downtown. You know, all of the focus and all the work we do can be overshadowed if we don't keep things clean and safe. And we've got a very active downtown now, 13,000 employees, 10,000 residents. We've got a heavy special event calendar. There's just a lot going on in the downtown. And I think extra eyes and ears, just kind of watching things to be preventative is super helpful. We support the additional ambassador position. I have him on speed dial and call him constantly. There seems to be a gap at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning of who to call to help. But, they've helped with everything of, dealing with pit bull dogs, and, walking up to somebody to deal with an issue or someone who's passed out, or, just somebody who needs help working the parking meter, or it's just been all kinds of issues this summer. It's been a little bit more intense than it has been in the past. We've seen more aggressive behavior. So I think anything we can do to help with cleanliness and safety is going to be really important for our downtown and keep people excited about being here and feeling comfortable. And anything especially that we can do that is more preventative, like this ambassador position, I think is really helpful. And, it's one of those things that's needed 7 days a week around the clock because we have a 24/7 downtown. So appreciate your attention to this and support of anything that helps keep downtown clean and safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kopic.
Next, it looks like we have someone from the South Central Community Action Program.
Welcome. Please state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Eddie Ryu Jr. I'm the Executive Director of South Central Community Action Program. On behalf of SCAP, I want to thank the City of Bloomington for the partnership opportunity to serve our communities. We hope to be an example for the rest of Indiana when it comes to municipalities working with their local community action. These funds will change people's lives, giving hope to many, and thank you again for the partnership opportunities to empower people to reach their potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else, Mr. Lucas?
Yes. Next, we have Eric Spoonmore.
Welcome, Mr. Spoonmore. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to express my very strong support for the funding request of an additional after-hours ambassador. I also want to express my deep gratitude to Beverly Callender Anderson, a paragon of leadership in city government and has been for many years. My only gripe with this request tonight is that Ms. Callender Anderson didn't request more of those positions. I think we could use as many as we can possibly get. We all know that there's more to public safety than just the police department. As my colleague, Mr. MG, mentioned earlier, the current after-hours ambassador, Mr. Culp, has been terrific. We could use so many more of these positions, and so I would encourage you to put pressure on the administration to add more of these positions to the budget. Also, really pleased with Ms. Callender Anderson's report on the Human Rights Commission. Well, they will be making some awards on civility. And earlier, a couple weeks ago, I had sent an email to our top 2 elected leaders in city government, the mayor's office and on city council, and disappointingly did not get a response to that. But I had asked for them to stand with the chamber in calling out acts of aggression in public meetings and to encourage more civility. Appreciate Ms. Callender Anderson's leadership on that. And the chamber will certainly be standing up for civility in these public meetings. We do not like to see acts of aggression that are committed towards women, people of color, especially public officials. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Spoonmore. Mr. Lucas, anyone else?
No other speakers at this time.
Okay. So we're back to council for final comments on community and family resources. Anyone? Councilmember Volin.
I have no complaints about the budget. I just want to thank Beverly Callender Anderson for her many years of service to the city. It's been a pleasure to work with her. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation and your good work. And we'll entertain a motion.
Yes, I move that the council recommends inclusion of this departmental budget as presented within the relevant salary ordinance and appropriation ordinance for consideration.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sims,
Very enthusiastically, yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Rosenbarger. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion in support of the Community and Family Resources budget is 9-0. Thank you very much. Our last departmental presentation this evening is Parks and Recreation, and Director McDevitt is here, and you have 20 minutes for, I'm sure, a very big and complicated budget. Best of luck.
This way. Great. Good evening, council members. I'm Paula McDevitt. I am the director of the Parks and Recreation Department, and I am pleased to be here this evening to present the 2024 Parks and Recreation General Fund budget request. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to thank the Controller's Office and staff for their many hours and reports that I request back and forth over the budget preparation period. And I'd also like to introduce members of our leadership staff that are joining us this evening. Becky Higgins, our Recreation Services Division Director, Satoshi Kido, our Sports Division Director, and Tim Street, our Operations and Development Division Director. I'd like to start this evening with our mission statement that we equitably enrich community well-being by providing quality parks, trails, facilities, programs, and services, and through the stewardship of natural spaces. We also do our work through our values. Both of these, mission and the value, were put together by our staff 2 years ago. We use them in print media, and this summer, several of our program areas had our values printed on the back of their staff shirts. This is the quickest and the best way to share everything that Parks and Recreation does and the $82 million in assets that we are responsible for. That is a heavy lift for a community this size. We feel your support and the support of our community out in the field, on our trails, in our parks, on our playing fields. And just a quick reminder, like I do every year, we are a nationally accredited department since 2001, and that is our management tool. And we have won the gold medal 2 years, and you will see in my budget request, it's that time again to apply for another gold medal. The first quarter of every year, staff come back from a holiday break and they put together an annual report. These are the covers from the past couple of years. All of these reports are available on the city website. The 2022 annual report is a report card to the community. It has our financial information, a report by program area with accomplishments of the year. And the 2022 annual report also includes a report from the Bloomington Parks Foundation, which is a board of 22 community volunteers that support the work and initiatives of our department. So if you haven't checked that out, that is on our website. The Parks and Recreation Department is managed and operated, and we make our decisions, our project goals, our 5-year capital improvement plan under a master plan. We are in the middle of our current master plan, and each master plan that we have managed to over the many, many decades has goals, and these are goals that I shared last year and will share another couple of years, but we really focus on maintaining and enhancing those $82 million in assets. We enforce activities and programs to positively impact public health, sustainability, and climate, and we prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and develop administrative and staffing capacities as the department grows. Our master plan kicks off with an interest survey, and I share this particular question and answer that our community told us these are the 3 primary areas they want us to focus on. That's connecting trails. Everyone loves our trails and wants more trails. Focus on maintenance. Focus on maintaining all the assets that we have. And then the third is reduce vandalism and address safety. I'm Going to pause here and give a big thank you and shout out to the Parks and Recreation staff. We are staffed by 62 full-time employees and over 350 seasonal employees, so I'm sure you have seen us out and about. This is the picture taken at our annual staff retreat where we celebrate the year and we plan for the next year. Our retreat theme this past year was inclusive leadership, where we spent the day talking about how to be a more inclusive department in all of the programs and services and facilities that we run. The team also works in action teams. We are so large and so separated that we oftentimes don't see each other. So our action teams is a great opportunity to work on these 5 areas, and every division is represented. This keeps them in communication, it keeps motivation going, and they have tackled, as you'll see in my presentation, some pretty big issues working in this format. Of course, we have challenges. We continue to see an increase of cost in supplies and services. When we put out a project for bid, we keep our fingers crossed that we get at least 2 or 3 bids. Sometimes we have to rebid a project. We continue to be challenged with recruiting and hiring seasonal employees. We work hard on staff retention to retain seasonal employees that they come back year to year, but it's a year-round process that our staff focuses on. And we also are challenged with vandalism and incidents in our parks, and I can say that is an everyday challenge. But there's also benefits to the work that we do, and we all are very dedicated and enjoy what we do, and I think we can all agree that attending a concert or walking out on a trail and creating community benefits everyone's mental health and physical health. We also study the trends very closely, and these are top trends. Golf is alive and well in this community, and our golf services numbers report that. You must be living under a rock if you don't know that pickleball is a hot trend not only in this community but across the country. Trail usage is up. Our community continues to attend in record numbers our community events and our nature programs. This is a picture of Griffey Lake Nature Preserve where a lot of our nature programs take place. We've also done a lot of work this year in sustainability and climate action. Climate action is one of the action teams, and it's been really rewarding to watch staff work cooperatively to assess what their needs are and meeting the challenges and the goals of the city's climate action plan. This is a picture of solar panels and then some new battery-operated equipment. I thought you would be interested to see the investments that this action team has made this year alone, and hopefully you have seen one of our battery-operated mowers out on our park properties. We now own 3, a couple of battery-operated vehicles, and we have replaced numerous pieces of equipment with battery-operated equipment. This is another project that we're very excited about. I can say that I have worked for the city long enough to remember where we used to write out on a piece of paper our work orders to the maintenance, to our operations staff. This project is being headed up by Tim Street and is a new software package called CityWorks. Currently working with GIS in the IT department. They are GIS mapping all of our properties and the assets in all of our properties. The first quarter of 2024, all of our staff will begin to use CityWorks to generate work orders. This will give them live updates when they're out in the field. They can submit a work order when they're out in the field on their phones or on a tablet. We can collect amazing data off of this, track costs, and keep ahead of our maintenance requests. We're doing a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do this with a lot of community organizations as well as the Community and Family Resources Department. As I mentioned, our staff retreat was inclusive leadership. We do events. The International Food and Arts Festival is super popular, coming back for a 3rd year. Performing arts series and our movie series continue to have a nice diversity of performers and selection. Bilingual services are offered for print materials, and if you are a follower of the department on Instagram, we describe every picture that we post on Instagram. I'm just going to give you a brief update on some projects that are underway. The first is the 2022 Parks General Obligation Bond projects. The Griffey Loop Trail Dam Crossing is underway, under construction, and this is a great picture of the work that's being done out there. And then we are currently replacing a little bit of sidewalk on Rogers Street just west of the Switchyard Park entrance. It's a small piece and it's a culvert project as well, but it's going to be a critical connection to have access down that sidewalk and into the park. And again, this is a more updated picture of the Griffey Dam crossing, and both of those projects will be complete by the end of this year. Bicentennial bond projects continue. Griffey Loop Trail, this is a 4-mile trail on the south end of the Griffey Lake that will connect to the new Griffey Dam Trail crossing. The Power Line Trail is across the street from the Switchyard Park entrance on Rogers. It's an east-west trail that's about 30% design. We're still working through some final approvals to move that trail forward. And the Miller Showers Gateway, I can tell you the gateway projects for the Bicentennial hit a major delay with COVID, but we're back on track, and you will see our construction crews out next week, as soon as next week, breaking ground for this 40-foot monolith in Miller Showers Park on the north tip of the park. And the finished product, this will light up at night. It includes limestone blocks, native plants, and trees, and will be interactive. And of course, we plant trees. We're planting a lot of trees. And currently, if you've been downtown, we are doing a major 90-tree planting project in the downtown area, which also includes replacing some tree grates. Several tree grates are 4 feet wide, and they need to be 5 feet wide. So you'll see a lot of work taking place here in the next couple months. And I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Rogers family for our newest ribbon cutting park that we opened this August. This donation was made possible by the Rogers family to the Bloomington Parks Foundation. It's a beautiful passive recreation park with a beautiful prairie offset by a newly painted barn. There's limestone benches to sit on and just a wonderful place to enjoy nature. Just a quick update on the 2023 budget goals. Of course, I can't go through all of our goals, so I'm just going to tell you about the pictures that we put in this presentation. And this is our new portable battery-powered LED message centers. We have 3 of them that we roll out at events to message information about that particular event, but we also promote upcoming events, and that has greatly reduced all the number of large print posters that we used to print off and put on sandwich boards. In the operations division, again in August, we opened the scatter garden at Rose Hill Cemetery. It is right in the middle of the cemetery. It is a beautiful, peaceful place and offers a new alternative for family members to honor their family members who have passed. Also in the operations division, trees and more trees. We're in year 1 of the 15-year Cala Repair Replacement Program. We've been doing a lot of education on that, and we have replaced 50 city-owned Cala Repair trees. In the recreation division, Banneker had a wonderful summer, but they only had 1 week off before they opened up with the Fairview After School program with about 45 children every day after school. And also in the recreation division, Switchyard Park, we installed a water station in the dog park. We're currently installing a shade structure. And Inclusive Recreation Coordinator is working in cooperation with other staff members on the new Bryan Park playground to address accessibility. Out at Switchyard Park, our health and wellness program area instituted a fitness class punch pass. This summer, we held classes out at Switchyard Park and had between 50 to 60 participants every week out at the classes on the stage and in the pavilion. And this continues through the fall and into the winter in the pavilion. In the sports division, I'm going to say it, but Frank Southern Ice Arena opens in 5 weeks, believe it or not. So we are busy getting that facility ready to go. And aquatics, Learn to Swim, was very popular this year. We don't have our final numbers yet because we have one more weekend, Labor Day weekend, to go, 3 more days of operation at Bryan Park Pool. And again, as I said, golf services is doing very well. And also in the sports division, we've seen an increase in membership since COVID. People are coming back, and more people are finding their way to Twin Lakes Rec Center. And both Twin Lakes Sports Park and Winslow Sports Complex had a huge increase in facilitating youth tournaments this year, where we work with tournament directors. We have the facility ready for them to use, and they come in with all their teams. So focusing on the 2024 budget goals, again, I'm just going to highlight a few. There are more outlined in your memo. But in community relations, we are going to be making 5 of our most used forms accessible. This is a big undertaking, but we feel that that will be very advantageous for many people who access our programs and our fee waiver and our scholarship program. In the operations division, again, activating the new asset management software program and working with the out at the Rogers Family Park vegetation management plan, as we have acres of prairie to manage out there. In urban forestry, year 2, this will probably be an annual goal, but we're going to continue to replace those calorie pear trees, working on a management plan for Leonard Springs Nature Park that gets a lot of visitors, and all the 4th graders at MCCSC rotate through Leonard Springs too. And at the cemeteries, again, reference to the scatter garden, just our first go around with this, so really promoting and making that available to the community. Out at Switchyard Park, I can't say enough about our pavilion rentals. We are booked every weekend, sometimes multiple events. We are already booking well into 2024, so we want to keep that revenue stream going. And inclusive recreation, aiding power assist door openers to make that facility more accessible. In community events, I hope you all have Monday, April 8th, 2024, marked on your calendar for the solar eclipse. Our program committee is already planning a weekend full of events. This is going to be the Mecca, so if you haven't heard or you want to engage, just reach out. We're happy to give you an update, but that's going to be a big day in this community. In Banneker Community Center, putting some focus on preschool programming on their wonderful, lovely, well-stocked preschool toys and books area at Banneker Community Center. Also at Banneker, our health and wellness coordinator, in partnership with Purdue Extension, using the newly renovated Banneker licensed cooking kitchen. It's fabulous and it's very interactive, so just really using that asset and making that available to the community. And I'm going to give a little shout out here for the Allison Jukebox. That is a facility that is available for community use. It's a beautiful facility, 2 rooms. We'd like to see more community use at that facility next year. And in golf services, we have some capacity we feel that we can fill with golf outings, so bumping that number up a little bit. And the ice arena, just continuing to interest youth in hockey. In aquatics, again, Bryan Park Pool does generate general fund revenue, so that is why we always have an attendance goal there along with our swimming lesson goals. And at Twin Lakes Recreation Center, facility rental revenue, our staff out there are very creative. They facilitate many, many rentals. Again, we do a great business by facilitating tournaments and user groups at this facility and many others. And that goes for the same at Twin Lakes Sports Park and Winslow. Again, realizing the past couple of years we have capacity to fill there, and we're seeing a really good response to some of the changes and field maintenance upkeep that we have implemented there. So, taking a breath and looking at our 2024 budget request, Category 1 personnel request is an increase of $670,675, or 10% increase. This goes to 3 new positions in the department. One is a special projects data analyst manager. Again, I've been with the department long enough to remember when we had a special projects manager about 12 years ago, and when that position was not filled, those duties were divvied out to several staff. We've grown in size. The number of assets that we manage have certainly increased. So there is a need to bring this position back and add the data analyst manager to it. This was also cited in the Raftellus consultant organizational study that was done early this year, but to support staff with managing the strategic action plan, the master plan process, the special projects, several contracts, project contracts, and also to lead staff in program evaluations in a more robust manner than we currently have been able to do with all the other responsibilities and using that data to make programming decisions. Digital content coordinator, this is currently being done by 11 staff members. We have a big presence in social media, and it takes a lot of time, so we'd like to remove that responsibility from these 11 staff members and consolidate it into one position. And then again, operations labor, again, to support our many new properties in sanitation and grounds, and of course, the increase for full-time non-union staff, 5%, and the living wage increase for our seasonal staff. Category 2 is a decrease of 6%, and this is mainly in fuel, office supplies, some building material supplies that make up that decrease. In Category 3, we have an increase of $136,380, or 4%, and I've just outlined a couple of areas where we have seen increase, water and sewer. The farmers market turns 50 next year, and we have never done a master plan, and it's time to take a deep dive and take a look at that. Machinery and equipment repairs at Bryan and Mills Pool. Our mechanical rooms at those pools take a beating, and we need to replace some pumps and make some improvement on the deck. And then contractual services for Frank Southern Center website. That is a revenue-generating facility, so we want to have a website there. And as I mentioned, it's time for the gold medal round 3 video. In Category 4, capital outlays, this is a decrease of $853,100, or 80%. We accomplished a lot last year in this category, and we have some equipment replacements in the 2024 budget. So overall, our budget request is $11,867,242. This is a decrease of $146,463, or an overall 1% decrease. And there it is again in summary. And just concluding with, again, our master plan goals that guide our work, our decisions, our community engagement, our capital improvement plans. We will continue to work to these goals until our new master plan in 2026. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and support of the Parks and Recreation Department, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. Questions from council? Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. McDevitt. A couple questions. Is the golf course still supporting itself financially, or is it subsidized?
The golf business is really robust out at Cascades. Last year, we cost recovered 130%. They grossed a little over $1 million, and we are on track again. They're at about 80%. Their cost recovery goal every year is 85%, and we still have about 3 more months. So it's definitely recovering its cost and then some, and staff are working really hard. I think it's a nod to the investment that we made with the last general obligation bond package, where we replaced the fairways with Zoysia, the new clubhouse, new pro shop, and we have just staff there that are truly engaged and enjoy welcoming people. So they're very busy, and we're really pleased with the business out there.
Okay, thank you. And then what's the deer situation at Griffey?
Thank you for the question. We, a couple of years ago, moved to a DNR program that was no longer did we contract with the sharpshooter. That's how this all started several years ago. And so DNR implements a program where hunters are put through a very robust assessment, and they're assigned areas in that. And we've continued that for the past 3 years. It's called the CHAP program, the Community Hunting Access Program. I think that's correct. And last year we took 46 deer. 2 years ago we took 46, and in 22 we took 47. The reports on the plants returning and the trees returning are very favorable, and the white buffalo, who we contract every year to run this program, presents us with a really thorough report and continues the recommendation that these community hunt programs are key in maintaining and dealing with the issues that we have out there with plant erosion and tree growth.
Great, so you see the plants coming back, the
Absolutely,
undergrowth is...
and I'd be happy to share the report that Steve Cotter presents every year, but absolutely we're seeing the return.
Okay, good news, thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember Smith?
Thank you very much for the report and for your budget presentation. I'm going to ask you will you update us on lights at the basketball court? Just because it's my last time, I figure I have to ask you.
And thank you for asking me, Councilmember Smith. We are currently taking quotes for that. Keto has had a couple of vendors come out and take a look at it. So I don't have an actual figure, but it is in process. We're taking a look at how far we have to run electrical, where we're going to hook into, but it is definitely on the to-do list for yet this year.
Thank you very much, and for all that you do and your department does. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Skimbeler.
Yes, thank you. Ms. McDevitt, how much do we spend on additional security services for the parks? And in your mind, are we adequately covered? Would we benefit from additional services? Would we benefit from less? Could you comment on that?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. The 2024 budget is for $366,000 for MSI Security. It's a private security company. We went to this model a couple of years ago. This contract covers the majority of our parks. I'd be happy to provide you with specific parks that they go to. They're on the Beeline Trail, but essentially we're getting 24-hour coverage, and there's a couple of shifts where we actually have 2 security personnel on site. They assist with locking restrooms after 11 p.m., making sure there's no one on park property after 11 p.m. They moved to a pretty in-depth incident report software system about a year ago, so staff get very detailed reports from them. And what we're finding is absolutely it is worth the investment in the money that we're spending. Is eyes on the park. The incident reports are not only if we are having an incident or an act of vandalism, but they also report if we have lights out. Quite often they are the first people to come upon an emergency situation. I can't tell you how many I have read where they were the ones who came upon someone, called EMS, and were the personnel, and so we were just thankful. And sometimes that's in the middle of the night or very early in the morning. Staff told me today that after the big concert Thursday night, 2 of their staff were helping a concert goer trying to find their keys, and they had their phones out. So they are a presence, and they circulate on foot and in their small vehicles, and I think just provide a sense of security. They answer questions, and they keep staff updated. So we're very pleased. We have a great working relationship with them that also includes BPD, our staff, and MSI Security.
Great. And that was 366,000 for the next camp? Thank you for that.
And that's in both Switchyard Park budget and operations budget.
Got it. Thank you. And a kind of a high-level question. You talked about golf and pickleball being, what's the next big trend? And I have no expectations for how you answer that. I'm just curious.
That's a loaded question because we're still, trying to see our way through pickleball. I can tell you with courts, multi-use courts are starting to trend a lot. So instead of it just being one sport, it may have a couple of different lines drawn on it to increase that use. But gosh, give me 24 hours. I'd be happy to look into it.
Sounds good.
But
And
we try and stay ahead of the trends for sure. But pickleball's giving us a run for the money.
Great. And I'm at my time, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. McDermott. When I think of quality of life in Bloomington, a big part of what I think about is Park and Rec and all the programs and some of the amenities and the properties. So thank you for that. And since you're the last person tonight, and I won't have an opportunity to do this next year, I really do appreciate you. Part of your memo says prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's the kind of details I think that I'm looking for from a department standpoint and how it filters down to even our most impressionable, most vulnerable customers, our kids, our multicultural. But it says, you have an international festival with cultural awareness, encouraging cross-cultural engagement, celebrating diverse cultures, representing the community. Can you take a second and just kind of explain you guys' planning and the results of some of that?
Absolutely. I think that we, as a department and as a field of recreation, we have the opportunity to really impact and go deep into diversity and inclusion because we touch so many people in all walks of life. And as I said earlier in my presentation, we create community, and we would be completely missing the mark if we did not have these conversations and did not plan a program season without diving into that and making sure it's like a checklist, making sure that that's right alongside you, and are we meeting that goal? Is this part of our program? And as I said, I can't commend our staff enough for their creativity. If they don't have the answers, they find it, or they find a community organization, or they find someone to partner up with, or they ask the questions. What are we missing? Community and Family Resources has been a great sounding board for us, and if they haven't joined us on a program that we're contemplating, usually that's what happens. They're like, oh, that sounds like fun, let's do it together. But if not, they'll connect us up with people just to make sure that we are continually keeping that in our focus. And I did appreciate your comment about frontline staff. That's really important to us, that every person that walks into our facilities, participates, is a community member, and is treated so and is welcomed.
Okay, in 30 seconds, can you talk about your staff retreat? Do you have a plan, and how does that?
Absolutely. It's one of the highlights. As I said, we don't get together often. This last year, it was inclusive leadership was the topic, and I had Dr. Gina Forrest, if you know who she is, came. I've known her for many years, and she was entertaining but really addressed the issue, and the whole morning was spent on talking about different situations that staff encounter at their facilities and having some really heart-to-heart conversations about it, and it was a great day.
Thank you. We're out of time. Thank you very much.
Other council questions? Okay, I'll take an opportunity to ask a couple. One is, first of all, thank you so much for attending to the calorie pairs. They're really a nightmare in this region. How many are there to remove?
I can get
Hundreds,
you that.
thousands?
Thousands, yes. That's why
Yeah.
it's on a 15-year plan, absolutely. But I can get you that exact number. It's in our inventory.
That would be great. I know some neighborhoods I bike through, and they're just every street tree is a calorie pair. Probably the same calorie pair, just a clone, everywhere. So my other question is, now I don't find myself at odds with Mr. MG very much, but in this case I am. And that is the urban planters downtown. I really appreciate city landscaper Joanna Sparks and her work to put in native perennials. Some are really interesting plants. I think they're very ornate. Of course, they senesce, and then people go, well, what's that ugly mess, right? But their habitat, they're providing seed, et cetera. Is there a way in which, that everybody can be happy here? Because there is I think this is a great lesson for people. There could be interpretive signage. What's your feeling about, do you get complaints, and what's the current status?
Thank you for the question and the opportunity, because yes, we do get complaints, we get questions, and just a couple of weeks ago, Tim and I walked Kirkwood and took a look very specifically at the planters, and a big part of that is education. Just educating people about the different plants and the importance of native plants and the habitats that we're growing in. As you can see, it's working, and it really is a beautiful thing. But one of the ideas that we are going to implement are just some more educational, bigger signage actually on the planters themselves. We currently have little signs that are in posts, and sometimes actually it's hard to see, but we feel like that is a key component just to explain what we're doing and the various stages that these plants go through.
Just as an aside, maybe something to add might be a QR code where people can observe pollinators or caterpillars or whatever and report back to the city. That's something I noticed in a town in Michigan, and I was really impressed because it invites people to participate. Suggestion.
Great,
so,
thank you.
Without any other questions, we'll go to public. Mr. Lucas, could you extend the invitation to our Zoom audience?
Public would like to speak to this budget, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can find that feature in your control bar under the Reactions tab or the More tab. You can also send a chat to the host to let us know you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas, and let's begin here in council chambers. Mr. MG. Welcome.
Good evening again, Chairman Rallo. This is Christopher MG from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, also a resident here and frequent user of the award-winning Parks Department. And I think sort of piggybacking on Councilmember Sims, it is the quality of life, and it is amazing what they're able to do and what history and memories we've created within our household. Just this summer, at Winslow Park, we were in baseball. On Sundays, we're flag football at Bryant Park. And on Tuesday, we'll be starting Twin Lakes basketball with recently 2 weeks at Kid City this past summer, and a history of Tuesday and Thursday mornings at Banneker Center for Early Childhood Development, not to mention my 8-year-old learned to swim at Bryant Park Pool. So this is a huge sort of quality of life piece, and I just want to thank the staff for, as someone else mentioned, being so hospitable. I mean, the key with the parks and these public spaces is accessibility and cleanliness, and I want to commend the Parks Board for recently banning the enclosures in parks. I think that has gone a long way with both the safety issue and the cleanliness, and I think it's important we stress the cleanliness of the parks to make them more accessible. I still get a few times people a little bit weary of Switchyard Park, and I want to commend the MSI security for the work that they do. We did a business expo there in April, and they helped out quite a bit. I think that's helping. So I think moving forward, we just need to make sure we're keeping the parks clean the best we can with those seasonal workers, that we are making sure those assets that we have, the parks, which has gotten so large, we're taking care of those, and working on the planters and beautification that Chairman Rallo just mentioned. I think we can diversify some of those planters and clean that up just a little bit. Thank you for your time tonight. I am done.
Thank you, Mr. MG. Mr. Lucas, who do we have on Zoom?
I see no takers on Zoom.
Okay. Anyone else in the chambers? Seeing none. Back to council for final comments. Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes, thank you. We know that Disneyland has been branded as the happiest place in America. Some people say that. And likewise, you know, our Parks Department should certainly be the happiest place in Bloomington, and I believe it is, thanks in large part to your leadership, your wonderful staff, and your board. We certainly appreciate any department head that is concerned about the morale of your staff, and I do appreciate that that is a big part of what you do. Again, when you're dealing with a quality of life issue like parks, which should be fun, uplifting, you know, a place where everybody can go to feel safe and secure and have a good time. So I want to thank you for that. I know the question of community character came up in an earlier presentation that, you know, how do you define that? And I just looked up a definition from the American Planning Association. It says it refers to a distinct identity of place, and that can be measured in a lot of ways. Urban planning, natural features, and then our demographics. And certainly your stewardship of our beautiful award-winning parks is much appreciated by me, and I wholeheartedly support your budget. Thank you.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I appreciate all the work of the many, many staff members in Parks and Recreation. I want to take the opportunity, especially since Mr. MG mentioned it, of speaking out against the Parks Board's recent decision to disallow tents in parks and during the daytime. I think it's not a matter of cleanliness as much as a matter of human rights. People who are unhoused do not have other places to go to store their belongings in the case of rain or other inclement weather, to sleep in the day with a certain degree of privacy, I think is a right that I would uphold for anybody. I understand there are concerns about public health, about possible crime occurring in tents, although I've received no data to back that up. So I think the problem is one that can be addressed in other ways, investing more in cleanup or in trash receptacles, in community outreach. But outlawing tents, again, it's it's addressing a symptom and not addressing root causes, which we must do. I think that it's, again, this means that many people who are unhoused will simply go and try to hide in places where social service agencies cannot find them and cannot help them. During the Parks Board meeting, there was somebody from the public health outreach team from HealthNet who said, you know, we build connections with people who are unhoused. We, know where to find them, Switchyard or in seminary, where often they have tents. And we, try to help them get a hold of their medical needs, be they physical or mental health needs. And now people will be God knows where, because they'll be hiding because they won't have any kind of privacy in parks. They won't know what to do with their belongings. And I think it just opens up a whole new set of issues for individuals in our community. So I'm opposed to this decision by the administration and the Parks Board. It does not seem to have much to do with the budget, so I don't really see any point in voting down the budget, but it is something I'm going to keep advocating to change. Thank you.
Other comments from the council? Councilmember Volin.
Just once again wanted to thank Ms. McDevitt for her many years of service, and I'm intrigued to hear that there is a third application for a medal. So that's a testament to certainly the ambition of the Parks and Rec Department. I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Piedmont Smith, on the unfortunate decision of the Parks Board. I do think that while the Parks Board made that decision, it is something that could be changed from above the Parks Board, and by that I mean the mayor's office. The issue transcends any one department. I don't like how the decision went. I don't see a solution that doesn't involve multiple departments and therefore the administration as a whole. And unfortunately, their track record on that has been one of denial. They must have someplace else to go. They must have someplace else to sleep. They must have somebody they can turn to for help. I think that one of the things we need to think about, and it's not something we would expect to see in a Parks and Recreation budget, is a city-run shelter. If the only shelters we have require a certain amount of proselytizing, then we effectively don't have a solution. And it's an issue that we as a city have avoided for decades, honestly. And add to that the normalization of public bathrooms. It's another thing that transcends the park department, but is something that we need to be thinking about. I mean, maybe we need a department for the public right-of-way, for public spaces that Parks is only a part of. But the dilemma we face every time we look at a budget is we have to do it according to the departments that the administration has set up, and problems like this transcend those departments. I wish I had a better solution. I don't. Thank you.
Further comments? I will just add that, first of all, your department does extraordinary things and an amazing array of things. And some of the decisions that you make are very difficult, clearly. A couple of years ago, it was the decision about Griffey and deer that divided the community. The decision about tents, open tents in city parks is another. I have sympathy to the people affected, certainly. I also was quite alarmed to hear about the various reports that I heard from police about activities in those tents. And so any information that you could share, I think that would be helpful for us, for council. I would be interested, as Council Member Piedmont-Smith just alluded to. I don't have any specific data, I just have sort of anecdotal information. But overall, I think your budget is extraordinary. You do amazing things, so I happily support it. So with that, let's have a motion.
I move that the council recommends the inclusion of the Parks Department budget as presented within the relevant salary ordinance and appropriation ordinance for consideration.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Piedmont-Smith,
Abstain.
Rallo,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Sims.
Yes.
That motion is adopted 801. Thank you so much for your presentation. And that concludes this evening's 2024 city budget presentation. We'll reconvene tomorrow, Thursday, August 31st, for planning and transportation, engineering, and all associated public works budgets. Thank you. We're adjourned.